Yep.
and Sputnik from
Ah,
Russia. Those were our
Yeah.
options. Yeah, it's crazy, Anne Marie.
It's really frustrating for them and for many like them and I think just how the government sort of
but seriously, Thai is quite a rich country, right?
yeah, but it was still
It's a
just
middle
as
income.
But
it
the
was a series
government
of
can
missteps.
definitely still afford it, right?
But her friends probably paid for it at a private hospital. I mean, everyone that
Ah,
I know who's been on a list for Moderna has been on a list in a private hospital, and some people even had the vaccinations canceled and are still waiting for a refund. I think it's like $100 a dose. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and
mm.
Cheryl, you'll be glad
Hey,
to know I just had a phone call, like just finished 10 minutes ago with Rachel Yang, who was in she's in
yes,
this room often, but she was in the room when
yes,
we did
I know
the
her.
Today's
Yes,
Startup. Yeah, no, she's amazing. And we know so many of the same people in the rare disease and pediatric rare disease communities. So
right.
we had a wonderful conversation. So thank you so much for continuing to facilitate those great connections. And Tyler, you as well, because we wouldn't know each other if not for tech news around the world. So thank you.
Oh, good to hear.
Welcome. All the best, Anna Marie.
Okay, are we ready?
Okay. Oh, top of the hour. You're on
Okay.
time. Just right
Air
on
horn.
time.
Happy
Okay.
Friday, everybody.
Yeah, that's what we were
Happy
saying. Happy Friday.
Friday.
Let me get my list open.
Your
There.
live Twitter.
And live
Pin
Twitter's
on
done.
top.
That's done. Audio
And
effects.
a
Here we
ear
go.
horn.
Music
Yay.
mode on.
Let's do
Let's do
this.
this. Yes. Well, let's start with that. Clubhouse did something called music mode. I tried to jump in that room to figure out what it was about, but I came in a bit late. So can somebody fill us in? What is this new Clubhouse music mode all about?
I was in the live music room with all the musicians, just enjoying what they are doing. It is a much better quality, if you are using it for music.
It's
Are you on the high
Apparently, it
mode?
must be in
Are you on the
stereo
high mode?
mode.
Yep, stereo mode. So the guy was playing something from left to right, left to right, left to right. So if you have the earphone, you will feel a lot of them. It's much more impressive. But Tyler, are you on high mode?
I don't know. I don't know. Because I'm not using
Okay.
Clubhouse. I'm using Club
Yeah,
Deck.
if you're using default, then maybe no difference. But you have to switch to the high mode in order to experience that.
Perjury claim. Oh boy. Ooh, we got some good
That's all.
tweets coming in today.
But anyhow,
What
anywho,
one of the glitches that I've seen and I've heard from others is that after the update, people are on mute, but people are able to hear people that look like they're on mute, but they're not on mute. So I hopefully they're working on that too.
yeah.
yep.
Both myself and I know Ben has suffered it as well. If you swap modes from normal, if you go to low or if you go to high, sometimes it just the miking unmiking process just throws a bit of a fit and doesn't really work properly, and you have to switch back to normal mode or leave the room and come back in. It's very weird, but that's been buggy since before this update. It's been buggy
Yep.
since the last update actually.
Yep. But anyhow, Tyler, this thing probably won't affect you unless you're going to sing for us. So you can
Okay.
carry on with what you do every day.
Okay.
Well, not even so much for that, because it's the opposite of the noise cancellation, where it focuses on the human voice, that sort
Mm-hmm.
of frequency range, and ignores the background noise. This ignores the human range and focuses on the background noise. So I'm not even sure if it's great for singing, right? I thought it's specifically for music.
Mm-mm. So far, the musicians are very happy with the new upgrade, apparently. Anywho, let's do this.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, does anyone have a hot headline that they want to make sure? I have exactly 22 hours of tweets to get through and all of the big headlines. So does anyone want to share a hot one they've seen in the past 24 hours?
Well, probably the FDA advisory committee making their recommendation around Moderna. I mean, that's a big deal, I suppose.
What's
It's
the
just one more
recommendation?
step. The recommendation would be similar to what was announced for Pfizer about, I don't know, I suppose a month ago around boosters. So it's one probably step closer to if FDA and CDC confer on the third shot for all population versus where it is now, which is for at risk and above 65. But up until now, Pfizer was the only booster that was recommended for immune compromised or older patients. So now Moderna is as well, and J&J will be next.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else got something they burning, something good they've seen?
John Madison is in the room.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Thank you. There's Aslak and John. Okay. We'll go through the top news then. And go ahead. Somebody was jumping in there? No? Going
I
once?
think it's just a hot mic. Yeah.
Okay. So the biggest news story today, Friday, October 15th, at this very moment, is from Bloomberg. It says they have sources, which kind of implies leaks, that the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, is poised to let the first Bitcoin futures ETF from ProShares and Invesco trade in the U.S. as early as next week. And that has caused about a 5% bump in the price of Bitcoin, as I said would happen when we met about 8 hours ago when that headline was coming out. I said, oh, that's going to make Bitcoin go up and retest its all-time high of 60-ish thousand. And sure enough, that's exactly what's happening. And it is, of course, once it reaches the all-time high of 63,000, it will come back down a bit, as it always does when it tests resistance points like that, historic all-time highs. And then it will turn around and quite possibly break through it. And then we will have to see where the next resistance point will be. Depending on news between now and when that could happen in the next 3 or 4 days. So if the Bitcoin community was really crafty and really clever, they would intentionally try and gin up some juicy news for about 3 days from now when that whole turnaround would happen, and try to avoid any bad news during that time. So that's the top story. Next big story, New York Times. Security researchers say plans by Apple and the European Union to monitor phones for illicit material are ineffective and could embolden government surveillance. And we did quite the deep dive on this story when we met 8 hours ago. And we even had Data, who's a cybersecurity expert, join us, who has been doing some really cool live streams on his YouTube account, which he did minutes before he joined us 8 hours ago. And he got a brand new iPhone 13 Pro. He upgraded it to the latest operating system, iOS 15.0.2. There's no newer version available. And then he pwned the phone. He did a 0-day exploit, proving that he and others and Pegasus, NSO group from Israel and others can get into your phone and completely control every aspect of your phone, top to bottom, left to right, soup to nuts, on a brand new phone with the most recent operating system, which is supposed to give you some sense of security because they just upgraded to 15.0.2 to cover a previous 0-day that was revealed a week or so ago, or that was kind of made public. And there's more. There's more 0 days out there. In fact, there's multiple 0 days out there for iPhones. And so Apple's got some explaining to do. Anyway, but back to the main headline, that cybersecurity experts sound alarm on Apple and EU phone scanning plans. That's the New York Times headline. A group of researchers said the dangerous technology was invasive and not effective at detecting images of child sexual abuse because, just like any kid who uses YouTube knows, if you alter the media, the images, the sound files, the movie files, what have you, you speed them up, you slow them down, you put some filter on them, whatever, the fingerprinting can be made difficult to do what it's supposed to do. And so it's possible to circumvent it. So it's not, a foolproof plan, and yet there's a whole lot of costs involved in, and they do quite a good job, these folks. And these are not ordinary folks who are saying that this is a bad idea. These are not bad actors by any stretch. These are, in fact, legit, impressive folks who are warning that this is not necessarily a great idea. Like from University of Cambridge, like from, what was the other prestigious university where their computer science department of experts chimed in and said, this is a really bad idea.
Was it Colombia?
It was Columbia, thank you. And the Columbia, I wanted to get theirs because they had some really spot on language, as you might imagine, with expressing how concerning this is. So I wanted to try and find that. But let's see if it's in here. It should be a national security priority to resist attempts to spy on and influence law-abiding citizens. And that's kind of their point, is you're preemptively scanning everybody who are, here it is. It's allowing scanning of personal private device without any probable cause for anything illegitimate being done. That's a great point. Normally, law enforcement, the way it works is you got to have some reason to, you got to have some probable cause. And we're jeopardizing the privacy of everybody with zero probable cause. No, we suspect nothing from the 300 million Americans that we are now roping into this. And so we got into this conversation about why is Apple doing this? This is very antithetical to Apple's posture for the past few years. In fact, some would say that this is 180 degrees antithetical to Apple's main value proposition. So this is a real head scratcher, how they've done a complete 180. Apple knows this is a complete 180. Apple knows this is antithetical to, this is really peculiar. And that raises the issue, is it really Apple who's driving this? Or is there somebody else up the food chain who's driving this? And it seems like there is. It seems, and especially when the EU's doing, and the FBI and the US, and now the US and the EU say they want to work together on these kinds of things, and it's a little peculiar. And it's not only Apple who's doing this. Instagram said in the same week that they were planning to implement similar types of securities. So what's going on here? It seems like governments, perhaps the US and the EU, are collaborating to force the big tech companies to create these backdoors that they say are for this very niche specific issue that nobody can really be against. I mean, who's against, who's for child sexual abuse? Nobody's, absolutely nobody's going to take that position. So nobody's opposed to that. Literally nobody. And yet, is that just an excuse, perhaps? Because it's already being revealed in the EU. It's where it says there are documents released by the European. A cybersecurity researcher said they had begun their study before Apple's announcement that they were going to do this. Documents released by the European Union and a meeting with EU officials last year, before Apple even said they were going to do this, last year, led cybersecurity researchers to believe that the EU's governing body wanted a similar program that would scan not only for images of child sexual abuse, but also for signs of organized crimes and indications of terrorist ties. Oh, so it's not just about what you're saying it's about. You're already a year in the past already painting a picture that you wanted this for things other than that. Oh, which is precisely what we're worried about, which is you're going to abuse this backdoor for purposes beyond what you're claiming you want it for. It's weird. And so
it's also worth remembering that it might not be that Apple's the only ones doing this on this scale. They're just the only ones that are openly admitting that they're doing it, which is a big difference. That changes the whole narrative of this.
So yeah, it's concerning. Anyway, So that's the second biggest story.
What would be the, I mean, what would be the nation state's point of doing it, other than the conspiracy theories? Like if we would give the benefit of the doubt. I'm one thing that I'm thinking about right now is how successful EncroChat and I think there was another one, it was the FBI that created this chat thing. Maybe that kind of pushed the politicians, some who were doubtful, to go with it, saying, yeah, we just have to do this because otherwise we'll never catch them.
Yeah, usually nation states like the U.S. and the EU, I think they like to do it for what they perceive as security reasons, national security reasons. And as I said when Data was in the house when we joined 8 hours ago, that I think it's because they correctly understand that end-to-end encryption is on the horizon and that citizens, for lack of a better word, are starting to become educated about data and privacy and end-to-end encryption, which this is all happening relatively recently. And there's now an actual, for the first time ever, due to lay people, Uncle Joe and Aunt Susie are starting to understand these issues and starting to adopt apps like Signal, which are marketing end-to-end encryption. And I think that kind of concerns the powers that be, who already have a bit of a backdoor and have gotten used to being able to have these backdoors. And they're concerned if we switch to end-to-end in these apps, well, they're going to need a layer beneath that, to, get their steady flow of info. I think they're worried about losing a potential steady flow of backdoor information that they perhaps might already have. And so they're going down to the hardware level, which is Apple.
So one thing, Tyler, like on this backdoor thing, I mean, there are two different types of scenarios. One is that, you have arrested someone and they've got the device and you take the device away and then you analyze and look into it. And at that point in time, one of the cases I remember, happened that FBI was looking into sort of like pressing Apple to actually give them the backdoor at that particular device. And Apple was just like, Tim said, if we do that, we're just going to be compromising on the whole business thing. And that, I vaguely remember that was almost a year ago. And the other scenario is if something is happening like real time, how the law enforcement agencies can actually, come into some device. I mean, I'm not talking about the Pegasus. I'm talking about like, from the backdoor perspective. I mean, the backdoor doesn't really give any leverage to law enforcement in real time. It's only once the crime has been committed, only then they can actually right in understanding this perspective.
I don't know. We'll raise that issue again when Data's back in the house. He normally joins us in the other time zone.
Is this something that maybe that sex offenders would have to sign up to with like a phone or something like that? Or is that...
That would be one way to do it. That would be kind of the conventional way to do it, is anybody that where there is probable cause or suspected or people who are on whatever that list is called of sex offenders. Then that makes all the sense in the world to me. And I think that's actually a fucking great idea. And if that isn't being implemented already, like if you're a sex offender, like your phone should be fully monitored at all times. All your devices should, the government should have backdoors into all your devices at all times.
Exactly.
And they should probably have to use that testicle sonic zapper that we read about.
I mean, because they already have like a flight list, right? Like
right.
People that they can fly. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a headline a couple days ago of a new male contraceptive device coming out of Berlin, of a hot water and ultrasound testicle zapper, which is supposed to, that could be employed as well. And it's a Bluetooth device, and then we could see if you're keeping up with your kind of
Zaps.
ultrasound castration device. That could be.
Only the Germans would come up with something like that.
I'll leave it to. I had thought the same thing. I didn't mention that last time.
On this idea that already kind of exists, right? If you just swap the word sex offender out for the word terrorist, then that's the whole Edward Snowden leak
Right.
thing.
Yeah. You're right. That's why
those systems are already in place and abused thus.
Yeah, and that's why I said we're on the brink of another potential Snowden type scenario here, because I don't know if you noticed, but when Data was in the room with us 8 hours ago, he quickly subtly stated that he has been in partnership with some government agencies and has done some things that he's not entirely proud of, and he wants to come clean about it. And that's barely any different than Edward Snowden in this case, where at some point these agencies are dependent on employing experts who enable these scenarios to manifest. And those are intelligent people with morals and ethics, and they can only be pushed so far before many of them say, you know what, this is wrong. And not only is it wrong, I need the world to know that this is wrong. Like the world, that was Snowden's scenario, and perhaps Data's not far away from a similar scenario. That was sort of the subtle statement that he made, and that's why he's doing these YouTube leaks now. And his Twitter account says pretty much exactly that. He's like, "Hey, Apple, I'm coming out. I'm letting everyone know. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is the world needs to know." The difference is going after Apple won't force them. Apple doesn't have an army, as far as we know, like the U.S. government does, which they can employ against, which they did, put quite a bit of heat and pressure on Mr. Snowden, who had to flee into Hong Kong and sleep with some family that his lawyer hooked him up with. And that's one of the most amazing interviews I've ever seen, where they went and found this family who had no idea who Snowden was. And that was the whole point, is we need to hide him here because the U.S. intelligence community is going to try and find him. And then they got him on a plane. They got him into Russia. There was that plane that left Moscow. What was it? Morales, the prime minister of Bolivia. And the American intelligence thought that Snowden had gotten on Morales's private jet flying back to Bolivia. So the U.S. forced a world leader to land his personal plane to search for Snowden on his plane. Holy shit. Holy shit. Talk about, because if he had managed to fly all the way to Bolivia, he would have been able to have amnesty in Bolivia. So they were forcing the plane down, because the plane was leaving from Moscow and was flying westward towards Bolivia. Obviously, he's the leader of Bolivia. It's his personal plane. So they have to force the plane down before it leaves Europe, because once it leaves Europe, it's over the fucking Atlantic and it's just going to fly direct to Bolivia. It's too late. You're over international water. So when the plane was flying over Europe, magically, Portugal and Spain and France, and I believe Germany, I'm not sure about Germany, but the countries that were between the plane and the Atlantic Ocean said, you're not allowed to enter our airspace. Turn around. Well, say what? What do you mean I'm not able to? Why can't I enter your airspace? I'm the fucking one of the world leaders. I'm the world leader of fucking Bolivia. What are you talking about? This is my personal plane. Yeah, you can't enter our airspace. Turn around. Huh? Why is Portugal and Spain and France all saying this? Well, because the U.S. wanted the plane to land so they could search it for Edward Snowden.
Does anybody have any idea what phone infrastructure is? Is there like a standardized phone infrastructure for US sort of personnel? Is it kind of, I think once upon a time it was BlackBerry was the accepted sort of, if you worked in any of the major departments, that's what you used. Is that still the case?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I seem to recall that when President Obama was elected, he was the first U.S. president that was really tied to his device, and so I think that's when the policies, you know, had started to develop. But I'm not sure where things are now.
Because obviously, if a large amount of US politicians and senior office sort of workers and whatnot, and people of significant importance are using Apple devices, then it becomes relevant. Then this issue actually becomes relevant to the US government in some way or other.
Okay. Okay, next biggest headline here. And kind of related. Number 3, Google threat analysis team says it tracks 270 state-backed threat actors. This is state hackers. And sent across 50 different countries, by the way. And they've also sent more than 50,000 alerts to users who are being hacked. Yeah, that's which is up 33% since last year. So state hacking is up 33%. That's kind of the headline right there. And they're doing, and by the way, Iran seems to be disproportionately doing a lot of that. And it's just your classic email scams where they're pretending to be your Apple iCloud account or your Google account or what have you. And Google sees those emails landing in inboxes and then they specifically email into that to you, the recipient, and say, hey, don't click that email. That's a fucking Iranian state-backed hacker trying to get into your shit. So the next one is WhatsApp starts rolling out end-to-end encryption for chat history backups in iCloud and Google Drive. Well, there you go. Just as I was saying, here comes end-to-end encryption, and the government's like, shit. We don't really want to do that. We've been dependent on WhatsApp and all of the ability to get all up in that, and we've caught a whole lot of bad people doing a whole lot of shit, so now what? So that's my conspiracy theory as to why they're now getting cozy with Apple and being like, hey, Apple, look, we could really, make life very tough for Apple to continue to make trillions of dollars. How many trillions do you have already? 2 trillion? You're on your way to 3 trillion? That's nice. Listen, if you want to get to 3 trillion, how about we partner up? You just keep that juicy data coming our way. Give us this nice little back door so we can keep the whole info train rolling. Sound good? We on the same team? Right. Lovely. Carry on. And that's my guess. But we'll find out. I'm sure, like I said, there might be a kind of Snowden-like headline in the near, not so distant future. The next one is from BBC. A Quran app developer says Apple took down the app in China. Oh, really? I wonder who asked Apple to take that app down. I wonder if the CCP told Apple to take down this Quran app in our country. And I'm willing to bet anybody anything that's what happened. So we'll find out. So the BBC says a Quran app developer says Apple took down the app in China saying it has content that is illegal. Oh, so the Quran's illegal in China now, is it? Another developer removed its Bible app in China this week. Apple has taken down one of the world's most popular Quran apps in China after a request from officials. Oh, okay. Well, I guess
Tyler, these changes are dripping out little by little. But if you pair all this type of stuff with the fact that LinkedIn has shut down its operations in China, you realize that China is gradually closing itself off.
Yes. That does. I'm picking up what you're laying down there, Francine. Let me see here. It says in the article, it has over 150,000 reviews and is used by millions of Muslims. This particular app, it's like the most popular Quran app for the iPhone. The BB understands that the app was removed for hosting illegal religious texts. Now, that's going to get interesting if China makes being a Muslim illegal. And geez, Well, it's a good thing China doesn't have any Muslims, right? Oh, but wait a minute. Those few million Uyghurs are Muslims. Oh, geez. I wonder if that's illegal. Wait a minute. 1 + 1 equals... Let me figure this out. Can somebody help us out here? There seems to be a kind of a... Maybe there's something here with these Muslims that are illegal. There's something going on in Xinjiang province or something. I've heard something.
You mean the slaves?
The Chinese government has not responded to the BBC's request for comment. What a shock. And the deletion of the app was the first noticed by Apple Censorship, a website that monitors apps on the Apple Store globally. In a statement from the app's maker, PDMS, the company said, according to Apple, our app, Quran Majid, has been removed from the China Apple Store because it includes content that is illegal. We're trying to get in touch with Cyberspace Administration of China and relevant Chinese authorities to get this issue resolved. The company said it had close to 1 million users in China.
See, I read all this as China is trying to keep its people under control and is kind of losing the battle.
Well, if you switch it, imagine a country saying the Bible apps are gone.
Well, apparently that's what they're also saying in this.
They're also saying that.
Yeah. However, China
Right.
has been accused of human rights violation and even genocide against the mostly Muslim Uyghur ethnic group in Xinjiang. Earlier this year, BBC reported that Uyghur imams had been targeted in China's Xinjiang crackdown. Apple declined to comment, but directed the BBC to its human rights policy, which states, we're required to comply with local laws, and at times there are complex issues about which we may disagree with governments. However, it is not clear what rules the app has broken in China. Quran Majid said it is trusted by over 35 million Muslims globally, and the aforementioned 1 million in China. Last month, both Apple and Google removed a tactical voting app devised by jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Russian authorities had threatened to fine the two companies if they refused to drop the app, which told users who could unseat ruling party candidates. China is one of Apple's biggest markets, and the company's supply chain is heavily reliant on Chinese manufacturing. Apple chief executive Tim Cook has been accused of hypocrisy from politicians in the U.S. for speaking out about American politics but staying quiet about China. Mr. Cook criticized Donald Trump's ban on 7 Muslim-majority countries in 2017. However, he is also accused of complying with Chinese government over censorship and not publicly criticizing it for its treatment of Muslim minorities. The New York Times reported earlier this year that Apple takes down apps in China if deemed off-limits by the Chinese government. Topics that apps cannot discuss include Tiananmen Square, the Chinese spiritual movement Falun Gong, the Dalai Lama, and the independence for Tibet and Taiwan. Another popular religious app, Olive Tree's Bible app, was also taken down this week in China, although the BBC understands that it was withdrawn by the company itself. Olive Tree did not respond to a request for comment. Benjamin Ishmael, project director at Apple Censorship, said currently Apple is being turned into a censorship bureau of Beijing and the CCP. They need to do the right thing and then face whatever the reaction is of the Chinese government. On Thursday, Microsoft said it was shutting down its social network LinkedIn in China, saying having to comply with the Chinese state had become increasingly challenging. The decision was made after the career networking site faced questions for blocking the profiles of some journalists. End of article. Illegal content, the Quran. Well, if the Quran's illegal, that raises an interesting issue, because the claim of the CCP is that the Uyghurs are they're being re-educated and being de-radicalized, but they currently don't claim that it's illegal to be Muslim, although if it is, oh boy, is that going to be that's going to change.
But they're also undergoing vocational training to transform their thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, so next one is from, let's see here. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of tweets about that one. There must be. Okay. At and then Francine's right. It's peculiar. It's happening at the same time as Microsoft shuts down LinkedIn in China, and there's clearly have a hypersensitivity and awareness to controlling. Oh, by the way, let's not leave out another headline we saw this week, which was that all media, all news media, radio, TV, and print must be fully state-owned with no outside investments, no private company investing in said media companies. Fully CCP state-owned. One party controls all news media in mainland China.
So that you can, this is a much bigger mosaic, Tyler, and it is a mosaic of, the internet came along and our people are realizing there might be other places to live and other things to do and other people to know other than the party. So we better crack down.
Well, this is where Hong Kong's going to get really interesting very quickly because it's illegal to say anything that threatens national security by their standing, their own, by their terms, which leaves it open for them. And they have taken down some websites already, and that's a very slippery slope of policing the internet. You're already not allowed to have any physical books or say anything. Or do any kind of protesting or have a T-shirt that says anything. And what was the really interesting artists, even cartoon books, or people are being jailed for writing cartoon books about wolves. And
you can't have a white piece of paper that's blank.
You can't have a blank white sheet of paper because that expresses that you've been silenced, and that itself is, protest. So, the natural extension is the online world, because the gap between the physical world and the online world is getting very small indeed. So anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the internet in Hong Kong.
Excuse my ignorance. Is there anything it's Ben here. Is there anything to stop Chinese people just leaving?
Yes.
I mean, is that
correct? Well, yes, mainlanders have a very difficult time leaving. Even Hong Kongers are finding it tricky. They can, to some extent. And what they're doing is the UK has issued UK passports to Hong Kongers because they feel kind of that they owe the Hong Kongers, having it been previously a UK territory, that, these were the Queen's subjects for 100 or whatever years. And, we kind of owe it to you as, a former colony so they've extended, if I recall correctly, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million. And the Chinese government is like, no, those are not legal. You're not allowed to have that. And if anyone is found to have had that, please tell us if you know anyone who is using one of these UK passports. And
see, this is really going toward where the Soviet Union was going, like 40 years ago or 50 years ago. Because you can't do that with the internet around.
But there's also no more foreign media, journalists in mainland. They're in Hong Kong and Taiwan. So Paul Moser for the New York Times, the guy from the BBC, they were all in mainland China until about 9 months ago. And then some of them started investigating the whole Uyghur stuff, and then they were all kicked out all simultaneously.
And Tyler, there are so many of them compared to the oppressors. Why do they put up with it?
Because the party has millions of members, many of whom are undercover and all up in everybody's game. So every teacher in China knows that there's somebody in the class who works with the party, who's, every university. And even Chinese students abroad are now saying that they're being spied on by the Confucius universities that have been set up very conveniently at most major universities. And that the Confucius universities, which has an office on almost every major university internationally, is basically the CCP's office to monitor the Chinese students who are international students at colleges outside of the U.S.
Well, and it's global. So I used to actually serve on the board of one of the Confucius Institutes when I was in the US. And I would go to the annual meetings in, any arbitrary city in China where they bring people from around the world. And, at that time, there was concern from within the US and US institutions about the opposite in terms of how these Chinese or the Confucius Institutes could be vehicles for espionage coming from the Chinese side. But now, as you've aptly mentioned, students, well, and something else that I've learned is that international Chinese students can only study certain subjects now. So that's a relatively new development as well. So when they travel outside of China to study, they're limited in terms of what subjects they can study.
So history is not my strongest topic, but when Tiananmen Square happened, not everybody didn't have a smartphone in their pocket, is what I believe. So
That's
is
true.
there any other future for this apart from just another better organized, more coordinated event like that occurring? That seems to be the only obvious endpoint of this whole thing.
Well, not necessarily that's not exclusively the only option, because with the power going out as it has lately, and with trade, China is rather dependent on importing and exporting as part of, they have a high percentage of trade as a percentage of their GDP. So if trade grinds to a halt, that's no longer, that would have seemed impossible even 6 months ago. That no longer seems impossible at all. In fact, it almost seems very possible. So if trade does grind to a halt, that could cause some real problems. And perhaps a lot of China's moves currently that we're seeing around LinkedIn, around this Apple and the Muslim app and all of these things, is in preparation of the knowledge that they need to, and removing of all foreign media, removing of all media that is not state-owned, making it illegal to even read foreign media who have negative views about China. We read that headline in this room 3 weeks ago. The installation of a somewhat required app for everybody who does anything with the government has to require an app now. If you're renting a house, if you go to get any government agency for any reason, if you fly anywhere, they require you to install an app, which the people who've installed it say shortly after they installed it, they received visits asking them why they were reading foreign media that spoke negatively of China, so they delete the app, yada, yada, yada. That all of these recent developments are a whole lot of, are in some, in aggregate, paint a picture of, the CCP getting incredibly concerned with controlling everything everybody's seeing and doing. And because they perceive that shit's going to get very intense very soon and it's very possible that the US and its allies are intentionally cooperating in a way that challenges and challenges China on economically at its most inopportune moment, as with Evergrande happening now. That could be exacerbated. That dumpster fire could be, people could throw gas on that fire, and the U.S. could, and its allies could, at this moment think, oh, you're now economically going through a bit of a difficult moment. It would be a shame if your importing and exporting were to somehow stop simultaneously to that, and create the scenarios that lead to revolutions, and intentionally. And I'm no doubt they would agree. The CCP would agree with my tinfoil hat suggestions here, that when things start to look very negative, no doubt they would likely agree that this is probably the doings of their political rivals. So and maybe it is. Maybe all of this supply chain stuff is kind of a wild 4-dimensional chessboard maneuver to as inconvenient as it is for Americans, it might even be far more inconvenient for Chinese. Because, by the way, there was a headline yesterday from Vietnam that Chinese goods are no longer even getting to Vietnam, because the headline said, for those who were in the room, you'll recall, the interesting implication is that Chinese factories aren't able to make anything in recent weeks, which is why these consumer goods are not getting into Vietnam, which they're the first person to get them, because they're right there. That's their biggest neighbor geographically. So why is Vietnam now not getting? And it said this is a headwind that we can expect to see in the rest of the world, because if Vietnam doesn't have it today, that means the rest of the world won't have it next month, because it takes 3 weeks for those boats to ship to the rest of the world. Well, those boats don't exist. Those boats are empty. Vietnam isn't getting what it used to, and so that wind takes time to spread across the planet. And if the Chinese factories aren't able to make things and the energy costs get too high, Russia has said many times over the years that America has forced oil prices too low, and that's how Russia makes money. And then when the price of oil and gas get too low, Russia can't make money, and that hurts their economy. And they accuse America all the time of it financially doing that. Oh, and by the way, what happens when we pull out our ace of spades, Mr. George Soros, and he sees that the debt levels in China are way out of whack? That's his bread and butter. That's when
his eyes are popping out right now, Tyler.
He's licking his lips and smacking his chops. That's how he makes billions of dollars, when governments get way over leveraged, and he's ready to knock that house of cards right out from under you. And by the way, China said about 2 weeks ago, George Soros is the son of the devil. Those are the foreign minister said those exact words, and that he's an economic terrorist, because they know he can step in at any moment and knock their house of cards down.
So for me and
Well,
the other
and they also
sorry, Dr. Fontaine, go ahead.
they also have a lot of brain drain of top scientists and things who are leaving the country, and they have an aging population from a labor standpoint, and they have immigrant problems, as in nobody wants to go there. So I see, and if I were the government, I would definitely see tough times ahead for China.
And speaking of which, Tyler, I just sent you an article from the Canadian National Post. It basically talks about Huawei's CEO saying that they must seek high-nose foreign talent from Canada and elsewhere because of exactly what Dr. Francine was saying about the fact that they need more brain power. And he said in a Mandarin speech to his inside group that that they should seek, let's see here, we must turn the graduate schools of North America into recruitment center, looking at these graduates going out to find talent and drinking coffee with them. This is not just the heads of institutes, but all levels of experts, attracting scientists, professionals, and current students. Go have coffee with them, and while connecting, develop a residence. And then he also said, this is like we must hire some high noses with foreign firepower, and within 3 to 5 years, move steadily from previous 8th Route Army towards globalization. That's the marching plan.
Okay. So the next biggest story, we just read the BBC article about the Quran and the Bible apps. It'll be interesting to see if there's more details about the Bible app. The next one is from the Wall Street Journal. It says, at the White House's ransomware summit, remember they said they were going to meet on Thursday. There was going to be this ransomware summit of 30 countries to talk about all of this state-backed hacking and ransomware doings, which disproportionately comes from Russia, according to Google and Microsoft. And interestingly, Russia and China were not invited among the 30 countries who were participating at the White House's ransomware summit. So the headline from Wall Street Journal says, at the White House's ransomware summit, officials from 32 countries pledged closer cooperation and will attempt to disrupt the financial tools used by hackers. And Russia and China were not invited. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's because Facebook and Microsoft and Google say that these hackers are disproportionately from Russia and China. Officials from 32 governments who met virtually this week to coordinate their response to the ransomware boom said uneven cryptocurrency standards are helping hackers cash in. The representatives pledged to share information about cyber attacks and investigations. So, by the way, this is interesting because even within the US, New York City has come together. All the top companies in New York City have come together to cooperate and data share about cyber attacks. Even in the US is telling all the top Fortune 500 companies, all of the security experts at all of those companies need to have a platform to share information to combat cyber crimes and hackings. And now 32 countries have come together to share information. So there's now essentially a global effort to coordinate, to share information about hackings and ransomware and cyber attacks to combat specifically Russia and China in their endless onslaught of cyber attacks. And the White House had a meeting, this virtual meeting with 32 countries. The representatives pledged to share information about cyber attacks and investigations, push firms to shore up security, and disrupt the financial infrastructure of a criminal hacking economy that has flourished in recent years. Consistent international scrutiny of cryptocurrencies will be key, the official said, as ransomware groups that extort victims for digital payments can quickly transfer the funds to countries with lax standards for monitoring illicit transactions. Here's the quote. We are dedicated to enhancing our efforts to disrupt the ransomware business model and associated money laundering activities. The officials from the US, the UN, Japan, and elsewhere met Wednesday and Thursday to discuss ways to counter a surge in ransomware, which the Biden administration has labeled the criminal hacking national security threat. Hacking groups have increasingly targeted U.S. critical infrastructure, disrupting the East Coast's largest gas pipeline in May and major meat processor in June. Law enforcement officials are sometimes able to track crypto payments made by such victims, which can reach into the millions across public ledgers known as blockchains. The Counter Ransomware Initiative, convened by the White House this week, called on countries to use such techniques alongside more aggressive enforcement of anti-money laundering and know your customer rules to prevent cryptocurrency companies from facilitating such transactions. The officials pointed to standards created by the Financial Action Task Force, an initiative from the group of 7 countries, but acknowledged their uneven global implementation. Here's another quote. We recognize the challenge some jurisdictions face in developing frameworks and investigative capabilities to address the constantly evolving and highly distributed business operations involved in virtual assets. But cybersecurity experts say international collaboration will be key in slowing down criminal groups that often operate across borders and with relative impunity in countries such as Russia. Kremlin officials who have denied such charges weren't invited to the Counter Ransomware Initiative this week, a senior U.S. official said. The official added that Washington is engaging directly with Moscow on the matter. Okay, next up. And by the way, they're doing ransomwares. It's for lots of money. This has become a new revenue stream for the Kremlin. Cyber hacking. American companies, and not just American companies. So
I think the ability to cause problems is much more important to them than the money.
Yeah, that too. The next one. Banking industry body UK Finance says Britain has become a global epicenter for scams. With £754 million, which is nearly $1 billion, stolen in the first half of 2021, up 30% year over year. It was an email offering a discount on an electronic toothbrush that began the sequence of events that ruined Anna's life. Fraudsters steal $1 billion in just 6 months. Tech giants in focus as crooks take advantage of social media. And it tells the story of somebody named Anna who got hacked, basically. And it's all growing 30% year over year, similar to the other stats we've seen on cyber attacks. Okay, next up from Bloomberg. Chinese government finds hundreds of banned crypto miners siphoning power from public institutions, with some 260 kilowatt hours of electricity being used every day. 2 provinces discover miners using university resources. Government broadened ban on crypto transactions last month. And we talked about this here. At the same time they were dealing with power outages, they also announced they're banning crypto mining because it takes a lot of energy. Imagine all of those crypto miners, which was 40% of Bitcoin mining was happening in China over the summer, up until the summer when they banned it. It's dropped down to near zero. There's still some. This headline says they just found some more illegal miners. But imagine if those 40% of Bitcoin miners were still legally operating in China, how rough the power scenario would be in China at the moment. China's drive to root out cryptocurrencies has uncovered hundreds of miners who were using electricity at public institutions. The Zhejiang and Jiangsu provinces recently started targeting miners who were consuming the resources of state-owned enterprises, government agencies, and universities and research institutes, according to a government statement and media reports that did not name the entities. Okay, next up is a Washington Post doing a profile on Cher Scarlett, the Apple employee leading the hashtag Apple2 campaign, kind of like the Me Too hashtag, but Apple2, which was an effort to try and get Apple employees to share their horror stories of harassment and discrimination. After Cher Scarlett felt she was being harassed and discriminated, she made a blog post, called it Apple2, and encouraged all of current and former Apple employees to share their horror stories with using that hashtag. And she claims that there's a whole bunch of them who have not spoken to journalists. Notice we've not heard any of these accusations. I think we would all agree, would we not, that if a whistleblower were to come out with accusations or files or documents accusing Apple of wrongdoings and kind of receipts, any sort of evidence or strong accusations of wrongdoings, I think we would be reading lots of headlines about them, right? Because we're reading them from Facebook, from Frances Haugen. She provided lots of documents. She made lots of accusations, and boy, have we heard lots from the Wall Street Journal about that. And so she's been doing Senate hearings. She's even going over to the UK to do Parliament hearings, right? So Cher Scarlett at Apple says that she's got a whole lot of people who have shared horror stories with her, but when the journalists ask her, okay, great, could you please give us some of those? Because we would like to air that dirty laundry for you on your behalf. She says, well, people are worried about losing their job, so they're not speaking to journalists. That's her quote in this piece. That makes no sense at all, because journalists happily will take your quotes and publish them for you anonymously. That's called being off the record. This is core to the whole concept of journalism. Journalists are very quick to tell you, we will very happily let you speak off the record. We will not name you as a source. We promise you, as journalists, we will not do that to you. This is one of the core tenets of journalism, speaking off the record. This is what allows journalism to happen. This is fundamental and the foundations of journalism. Speaking off the record. I can assure you, if you tell us your stuff, you have nothing to worry about. We will never, ever, ever name you to your employer or anybody. So feel free to tell us your horror stories. And Cher Scarlett at Apple says, well, there's a whole bunch of people who have come to me and told me their stories, 500 of them, according to Cher Scarlett, but they're not going to the journalists because they're worried about being exposed. No, there's no reason to fear being exposed. The whistleblower who went to the Wall Street Journal wasn't exposed until she decided to expose herself on 60 Minutes. So, it's a little peculiar, but the Washington Post is doing a profile on the lady who was fired and then made the hashtag Apple2 movement. And this is a really peculiar profile. This ain't your ordinary profile. As you'll see here in a second, it says she pulled herself from addiction by learning to code. Now she's leading a worker uprising at Apple. Cher Scarlett is willing to risk the dream job at Apple to blow the whistle on alleged labor violations at the iPhone maker. Okay, so if she's blowing the whistle on alleged labor violations, let's hear the alleged labor violations, shall we? Right. Let's hear her out. Hey, we're all ears. The world is all ears. The Senate is all ears. The Senate is dying for this. The world is dying for that. We would love to hear your beautiful whistleblowing about Apple's wrongdoings. Evidence number 1, Frances Haugen at Facebook. There is no shortage of appetite of eager ears to hear your whistleblowing. And Wall Street Journal showed they will happily keep you anonymous, off the record. Wall Street Journal never named the person until she decided to come forward. So, Cher Scarlett grew up poor and dropped out of high school as a teenager. She struggled with addiction, danced as a stripper, and tried to overdose on pills. Boy, what a fantastic intro to a profile piece about an Apple whistleblower. Apple does not care about its employees. It cares about money, Scarlett said in an interview. Maybe it's capitalism, and that's just the way corporations are, but I can't live my life further accepting it and not saying something about it. Okay, well, you just said it there. You just said it. Apple doesn't care about its employees. It cares about money, and that is capitalism, and that's the way corporations are, and that's not good enough for you, and there you go. Bada boom, bada bing. Ladies and gentlemen.
Well, if she gets fired, she'll be able to say anything.
No, check.
But right now, she's taking a paycheck.
Precisely, and
and there comes the book deal.
Yes, and she even says exactly that. Actually, she says a really amazing quote, precisely to your point, Francine. I have to find it if you bear with me for 2 seconds. I'm not a corporate shill, but I'm also not going to throw away my job. I'm not a corporate shill, but I'm also not throw away my job idiotic.
Run that back, Selector.
I'm not a corporate shill, but I'm also not throw away my job idiotic. I have to feel good about what I'm putting into the world, whether that's my job or on social media, whatever. I have to feel good about it, and if I don't, I have to remedy it immediately. But I'm not going to quit. But I'm not stupid.
Oh, God forbid. The money's too good.
Right.
So here's the thing.
I'm going to whistleblow.
The hood before we said yes, we'll work for this company, and what is the company supposed to thrive off of? I'm so confused here. What do we really think companies are built for?
Yes, Jobs would have fired her in a heartbeat. But check this out; it gets even more. It's the cognitive dissonance gets even more rich. It says, where is it? Where they really get down to the strong statement here. Here it is. Oh, here it is. Here we go. More than 5. Many working on that. Okay. Many working in Amazon, they've accused the company, Apple, of erecting an opaque, intimidating fortress that tolerates racism, sexism, discrimination, retaliation, bullying, sexual, and other forms of harassment. But I'm not a corporate shill. I'm not
anything to support those claims, or we're just throwing all the isms out there.
Precisely, that was my point. We're all waiting. We are. Here's the red carpet. Here's the silver platter. Would you like some sugar in your tea? Would you like 2 spoons? Would you like a straw? We're we are. Here we sit, hands folded on our laps. Please continue. Carry on with the actual examples, please. Please go ahead and jump to Exhibit A.
And how long was she working for the company before she decided that her ethics had to come first?
I think it says 2 or 3 years.
Oh, that's a long time to sort of figure out your integrity.
It's a very peculiar case. So, yeah, we're going to wait for the smoking guns here. We're going to wait for the kind of evidence. And by the way, well, don't get me started. Anyway, that's the Washington.
Well, Apple
Go ahead.
Apple has had a very secretive culture, and no one has ever tried to blow the whistle on internal conditions. But then they got on Slack during the pandemic, and employees began talking to each other on Slack channels. And this is secondhand information. I'm obviously not on the Apple Slack, but once they began talking to each other, in their Slack channels, a lot of complaints emerged. And that's where all this stuff is coming from.
Yeah. And by the way, well,
your hourly reminder that Ashley Giovic's still here.
Give me 2 more seconds here. There was another really choice quote, rather exemplary cognitive dissonance, where Miss Cher Scarlett insinuates that it's actually the media that's helping Apple do its discrimination and sexual harassment and discrimination. That the media is compliant and or an accessory in all of this, which I found particularly confusing because they seem to be incredibly eager to find and air the dirty laundry of any misdoings at Apple or any big tech company. That's kind of their bread and butter these days. Yeah, here it is. Well, it wasn't her, actually. It was a lady at Google who said that the way the tech industry is covered by the media, which to her deifies tech leaders, helps shield tech companies from scrutiny. There's no accountability. Right. So the tech industry is covered by the media, which deifies tech leaders, right? Like Mark Zuckerberg. Like they've really turned him into a superhero lately, right? And they help shield tech companies from scrutiny. Huh? The New York Times has written 20 pieces over the last 2 weeks trying to shoot holes at Facebook. There's no shortage of articles trying to shoot down Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, what have you. We read them every day here. What exactly are you talking about? That the media is shielding big tech? Helps shield tech companies from scrutiny? What planet are you on? I want to go there. There's no accountability? I don't know what planet that is, but I would love to visit.
I'm not a fan of Facebook, but for years the media has been chomping at the bits for anything concerning Zuckerberg, just to sort of, so this doesn't compute for me.
To imply that the media is, not holding tech accountable, you just lost all credibility in anything you have to say. That ain't even close to the reality here on planet Earth in October 2021. That might have been true in some other era before I was born, but that ain't been true in recent years anyway.
I think the media has given Apple a pass compared to the other companies. And the reason for that is Apple's repositioning around privacy. And so Apple has managed to cut itself off from a lot of the scrutiny that the other companies have come under.
Okay, but here's a headline from the past 24 hours. I don't totally disagree with you, Francine. As always, I mean, I feel like we have nearly 100% in common with all of our kind of thoughts and stances on things. But there was a headline in the past 24 hours about Ashley Gjovic from Apple, who's, in addition to Cher Scarlett, is also on a bit of a movement to take down Apple. And the headline says Apple wanted her fired. It settled on it found a way on an abused excuse. The reasons for firing Ashley Gjovic include tweeting a photo of herself taken by her own phone. And it's a deep dive into how Apple did fire Ashley Gjovic, where they haven't yet fired Cher Scarlett, the profile that we just read. And they're saying that Apple, basically found some, trivial, fake, absurd excuse, as this headline says. It settled on an absurd excuse. Apple wanted to fire Ashley Gjovic. It settled on an absurd excuse. So they're calling Apple's reasons for firing Ashley Gjovic an absurd excuse, which was she tweeted a photo of herself. It says in the headline, the reasons for firing Ashley Gjovic include tweeting a photo of herself taken on her own phone. Yes, and through an app that was a private app only to be used by Apple employees privately. It was a prototype app that is not public, that nobody knows exists. That's confidential shit. She knew that. So they tried to contact her to discuss it. She wasn't willing to discuss it unless it was in writing. And they said, no, we're not going to do it in writing. We just need to talk to you today because you have something we need to talk about urgently. She says, I'm happy to talk with you urgently in writing. They said, no, we're not going to talk about it in writing. We're going to talk about it right now on the phone. Oh, yeah, okay, of course, yes, in writing. And then they said, okay, we understand you don't want to cooperate. And so you're terminated. She says, no, I'm willing to cooperate in writing. And they're like, no, that's not cooperating. We need to talk to you about something verbally. So, and no doubt her lawyer probably told her to do that. And that's not really the issue. The issue is they tried to get her to take down her photo that she had put on her Twitter account. And even after the fact, once she ended up taking it down, which kind of suggests that there's some implied guilt in that if she's complying with taking it down. Because her lawyer probably told her, you know what, this probably doesn't look too good for you to leave that up. The reason that so the fact that she took it down, she didn't have, once you're fired, what's the point of taking it down? The damage is already done, unless it actually is. Right? But when the journalist writes the headline that Apple wanted to fire her and settled on an absurd excuse, including tweeting a photo of herself taken on her own phone, well, you're intentionally leaving out the more important context here. So this is an Apple, a piece where they're siding with the individual who was fired from Apple. They're not really siding with Apple. They're kind of painting Apple out to be the bad actor in this drama. You're right. You do bring a great point, Francine, which is Apple is unique in the positivity that it receives of the big tech companies by the big tech press.
And I was just going to say, you're right, Tyler. That's a hit piece.
I think the reason why Apple's been spared is because their monetization model centers around hardware instead of monetizing people's data. So when we talk about privacy in the context of Apple, it's more of securing it versus security in the or data in the context of the other companies where they exploit it, if that makes any sense.
Okay, so the next one, shall we, is Coinbase asks Congress. Coinbase is the largest crypto exchange in the U.S. Apparently, Binance is still the largest globally, although they just had to stop doing business in China because China said no more crypto, nada, zero zippo. So Binance has completely cut all ties to China because it's illegal. Coinbase is, and by the way, Binance is not working friendly with any government. Every week there's a new government saying, you don't have a license, get the fuck out of here. And Coinbase is trying to be incredibly legal. They have incredibly big investors. They are a publicly traded company on the stock exchange. They want to comply. They don't want any headaches, any problems. And they even, when they had a new there was a big important headline about 2 weeks ago that they wanted to come out with a new offering called Lend, where you could take kind of loans out on your crypto holdings, which several other outfits offer that. And they want to offer it too. And they said, we're going to do this. But before we do it, we're going to take a trip over to Washington, D.C. and try and meet with the SEC and explain what we want to do and have a little chat and talk with all the agencies and, you know, do the dog and pony show and comply. And do this in a very compliant way. Strangely, the SEC was the only agency that refused to even meet with them and didn't even respond to the invitation. And then when Coinbase says, well, okay, I guess we're okay to do it because we sent them an email expressing what we want to do. So now we're announcing it to the press that we want to do this thing. SEC jumps in hot on the mic and says, if you do that, we'll sue you. Say what? So Coinbase says,
Hello.
yes.
Alexandra, Jennifer,
Okay,
and
thank
Michelle
you.
is in the audience.
Okay, thank you.
I think she can comment on this.
Okay. And then what's interesting today with this headline that Coinbase, this is from the Wall Street Journal, Coinbase now is asking Congress to regulate digital assets outside of the existing financial system, meaning the type of assets that they want to deal with on Coinbase, like NFTs, like all the crypto stuff, all of it, because they want to do all of it. So they're asking Congress, hey, Congress, could you please make up your mind of what you'd like to do with NFTs and all this crypto stuff? Make the lines really clear on this basketball court that we want to play this game on, because we've got our shoes on, we've got our jersey on, we went to training camp, we're ready to rock. So if you could just go ahead and make your decision of how you're going to treat these cryptos and NFTs as either assets or commodities or whatever you want to think of them as, so that we can get down to the business of playing this game. And because we want to do it in a compliant way, make your rules, draw the lines on the court. Let's do this. But could you please hurry up with this so that we can get the party started? And that's the essence of what this is about. Coinbase asked Congress to regulate digital assets outside of the existing financial system and to create a special regulator for digital asset markets because y'all are moving too slow over there.
No, okay, can I just comment
Go
on this
ahead.
quickly? So first of all, a number of the executives at Coinbase follow me. If you guys are in the room and you're going to say something that I said, can you please at least acknowledge that it's from me? It's literally a word for word quote. Come on, guys. So their argument now is the same thing that I say, which is that the current security structure is predicated on the idea of intermediaries, and digital assets have no intermediaries, so they need to get another regulator. None of that's going to fly because that's not how it works. What you ask for is a regulatory shift to provide for non-intermediated financial assets. All right. So if you're going to quote me, say that exactly, please, and go ahead and say that that's what I'm doing. But or that's what you should do. That's how you go about and do it. Now, Gensler already commented on this at SEC Speaks, which he did in his usual backhanded way. But it seems really obvious if you know, like it's just all contextual. But it seems really obvious. He talked about the Wells letter process, which is that process that Coinbase went through. They tried to go and get a meeting with the SEC, and the SEC said no and gave them a Wells letter. Gensler said at SEC Speaks this week that let's talk quickly about the Wells process, which is that if when you say I want to talk about doing something, but if you do it, you will be that we're going to sue you, we're going to litigate against you. There will be an enforcement action because there's precedent. You don't get a Wells meeting unless it's not something that can be handled at the division or division chief level, and this is completely falls within the people who've already done it before. It falls within a paradigm that already exists. They're not going to grant you unless you bring a new argument. So, okay, Coinbase, bring a new argument. You want a meeting, you have to bring a new argument. Do you have lawyers? Honestly, you guys have to, like, I'm just really perplexed at all of the series of actions. It's like they don't have anybody who's telling them how to do this process. Gensler wants to consolidate the SEC and CFTC. He wants all of it underneath his regime, right? So, because remember, he was the former head of the CFTC. So saying, no, we want to go and create a new agency or a new regulatory structure outside of that is not going to fly well at all. And in the meantime, you're still going to have to be compliant with the SEC. None of this is a good strategy. This is all bad strategy. There is a way, they have a legitimate claim. The claim is never going to be something like what they said about Lend is, everyone else is doing it. That is a terrible argument that will never win. So what they need is a better strategy to come in and say legitimately, we are trying to do this kind of account. We want to be able to offer this to people. We have an alternative idea of how to do it within the framework. That's what you have to do. All you have to do is bring it within the framework. You can do that. I don't understand why this is so difficult. And then you go in and schedule a meeting for it. There's a procedure for all of this, and I'm not really sure why they're not following it. But all of the PR stuff that they're doing is just making this situation worse. So most of this, they're doing it to themselves. That is all I have to say.
Okay. Next up, from Wall Street Journal, Microsoft is shuttering the Chinese version of LinkedIn and replacing it with a job board. Sources say China told LinkedIn in March to better regulate the content, and Microsoft and LinkedIn say, yeah, that's way too much headache. You're sending us way too many requests. Even though we're making billions of dollars, it ain't worth it. It's too much fucking headache. Forget about it. And that must be a whole lot of headache to turn away the obvious very large amounts of money. That's their third largest market that they're cutting their own foot off. How many requests must they be getting to not make it worth it in your third largest market? Oh, and by the way, very interestingly and very subtle, in the article it says that the White House has applauded LinkedIn for the move of backing out of China. Why would the White House applaud the move? And is perhaps the White House was involved in whispering in their ear? And by the way, did Heyman not just read a whole article about how China's trying to recruit every smart person in the U.S. to come to China? And maybe now you know why LinkedIn was the only American social media company allowed in China? So the next one is Reliable Robotics, which wants to retrofit commercial cargo planes with autonomous systems. Raises $100 million. Led by K2 Management. When flying cargo from one part of the world to the other, you typically need a pilot for two parts, the takeoff and the landing. So they want to automate all of that, and that's gravy, and they're raising $100 million. Now, there's a separate but obviously related headline today that Amazon is on the hunt to buy up as many long-haul cargo flights as they can. Planes. Any old cargo planes that exist, they want them. And that's really interesting because, as you might have heard, there's a global whole backlog of shipping containers. People can't move shit around with the ships. All the ports are fucked up.
Might be the solve.
Amazon needs to move shit along. Amazon is the most advanced logistics and shipping company on the planet in the history of planet Earth by a long shot. And all of these container ships that are sitting off of ports for months at a time, that's causing them personal headaches. And they're not going to sit around and let that happen on their watch. Go buy up every fucking long flight capable ship that can get out of China. So that's what they're doing. And this company is making them autonomous.
Tyler.
Yes.
That's also interesting as well, because I think I mentioned this a while ago.
we were talking about those crazy Zen pods in the Amazon warehouses, that there will be an Amazon warehouse coming in by Schiphol in Amsterdam. And strategically,
That's the airport for those who don't know. Yeah.
yeah, the unique part about it is that it's only 40 minutes from Rotterdam, which is where the ships come in.
The largest port in Europe. Yes.
Exactly. So they're definitely placing that airport, that warehouse, very strategic. And I wouldn't be surprised if they give a run for the money to be the provider of that in all of Europe. Because if they're in the hub and spoke location like Amsterdam, right by the airport, and then they have access 40 minutes to Rotterdam, that's going to be a quick supply chain move in here at least. And it may open up the possibility that Europe may certain parts of Europe may see a resurgence of the possibility of intercountry products, like making and manufacturing products
I think
inside.
you went out for a minute, or was it just me? You went out for a minute.
I don't know, Tyler, did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
All right. No, it's okay. But yeah, so it was just an interesting thing, because if they're doing this, clearly they're trying to address the supply chain. And addressing it also could mean that they were already in process of building something locally for Europe. Maybe they also had an idea that this was going to be coming soon and they'd be
Yep.
preparing for it.
So check this out. The
But
headline.
that also means that they're positioning themselves to be the leader in distribution as well.
Right. So check it out. The headline is Amazon said to be shopping for long haul jets that can fly directly from China to US. Fuck those 3-month shipping container boats that can't get out of China anymore. That's turning into 6-month delays. How about we do 24 hours? How's that work? Oh, what do we got to do? Buy up all of these jets that have been grounded during COVID? How much do you want? Buy every fucking last one of them. They're worth their weight in gold in this. It'll give Amazon an asymmetrical advantage to get shit out of China. You want to buy something? All the stores are empty? Oh, that's so sad. I'm so sorry to hear that. We have it here on Amazon. Oh yeah, we bought everything that anyone in China can make. You can make something in China? That's great. We can ship it out on our airplanes. No one else can. No one else has anything in their stores. Their stores are empty. Ours aren't. You want something? We got it. Who are you going to call? We got the planes. We get all that shit out of China. Lickety split. Oh, China, you don't have power? No problem. What do you need? You want a fucking thermoreactor? You want a plasma reactor? We'll do whatever it takes. You keep making the shit. We'll keep the orders flowing. You keep making the widgets. We'll get that shit sent over. Amazon ain't gonna let this system collapse. They see a golden opportunity.
In 3 days or less.
Yeah. And for Prime, it's even better.
Exactly.
Are they going to have a backlash though in the age of as people are examining big tech and their power, if they control not just access to the access to data, but literally the access to supply chains? Aren't we going to see some sort of pushback in the age of new international?
I would love to see what that pushback looks like when your supermarket shelves are empty and the only place to buy shit's on Amazon, and you've got some moral issue with Amazon, and you want to buy some toilet paper.
Don't they have Alibaba though?
Alibaba is for Asia an option. Most Americans have never heard of Alibaba. I would even say most Europeans have never heard of Alibaba.
Well, and the shopping experience is terrible on it. It's really bad. It's like that's what whenever I see like a kind of a mess, everything is all over, and you don't know who's doing what or what quality is where. That's Alibaba. Like that's kind of what that experience is. But I could see something like governments, especially of wealthier countries, saying, if you do the supply chain, if you want to ship them back and forth, that's fine, but you have to convert it to like an X percentage has to go through more traditional shipping and stuff, because the problem is what they're going to end up doing is usurping all of the trucking, all of the delivery services from other other delivery services, retailers, etc. That's a huge amount of financial power too. I mean that you're not just saying you know, Amazon is the one that's providing these services. You've got unions and you've got like, you know, huge amounts of money that have very active lobbying groups that are going to say, yeah, this is going to make my entire industry go away if you let them do this without at least guaranteeing some of our load here. So you have to do, you know, you have to do that. I
Yeah,
think
but
it's going to get
if you're a country and your choice is not having shit in your stores or letting Amazon have, you know, asymmetrical power and providing that shit to your people, that that's I don't want to be that politician.
Yeah, when my kids have a Furby this Christmas, and I don't know what the kids want this year, and the other parents don't, and I see stories about, you know, parents trampling over other parents to get the Furby, I'll be freaking glad Amazon did what they did.
So check this out.
Yeah, but what about all the people who are employed by these people? Like, that's the thing is it's a huge, like, already we have this very shaky employment environment, and you're going to say, okay, well, now all of these people are not going to have job options, and it's a huge, like, this is a huge percentage of the population that is actually going to be impacted by loss of jobs, by, you know, the economy will contract with that. So it's at the expense of first reelection if they're concerned about that, but also at the expense of economic growth because you're looking at one company who has a huge amount of tax breaks versus a bunch of people that are going to pay more in taxes because that's the way our system works. It's stacked bottom up. So, I mean, I think this is I think there's a real political argument here to say you can't do this way because it is going to have, you know, a huge adverse impact on the rest of our economic structure. The way you
But
can do it is by offloading it to other people, offloading it into the stores. You can bring it in and they can pay you as the big distributor, but you have to put it into the stores, etc.
I
So
mean, isn't
Tyler,
that the? Oh, go ahead.
have you heard about the company that's building a cargo dirigible airship?
Yeah,
yeah, I
Oh,
have.
that's what I was saying. I
that
see
sounds
that in
safe.
the point of like I see what your point, Alexandra, but I see the kickback being more in terms of competition. I foresee there being more support for other companies to compete with Amazon rather than a pushback from governments because we have a need immediately that needs to be satisfied. So long term, yes, but for now, I think Amazon takes it and runs with it, and we'll see more competitive entities forming around that.
I mean,
I think
isn't the challenge here that we have, you know, 40, 50 large cargo containers hanging out outside of the port of Long Beach without longshore
Exactly.
offload them?
Well,
I
so
mean,
check this out. So I recalled an article from 3 weeks ago, and I just Googled it and found it. It says Amazon inside the company's newest, biggest air hub, the $1.5 billion air hub at the Cincinnati, North Kentucky International Airport, blends state-of-the-art robotics and technology. And then in search of that article, I found two new related articles and a huge props to Business Insider for this spot-on headline. Here it is from yesterday in the past 24 hours. Amazon wants used cargo jets to avoid major port delays. Amazon Air was first launched over 5 years ago. Since it has grown to encompass about 75 planes, which operate primarily in North America. And now they want to buy up all of these long hauls from China to the US to overcome the port delays. And another headline that came out in less than 24 hours, Amazon opens new Washington Air Hub distribution facility in Spokane International Airport. Amazon begins operations Thursday, that was yesterday, at its newest air cargo hub at Spokane International Airport, becoming only the second facility of its kind. The other one's the one in Kentucky that opened 3 weeks ago. And
hey Tyler, I think I can get a VP on here from Amazon who handles air operations. Should I try?
sure, the other one was where was it? Amazon in search of A330s and B777s. The majority of they're trying to purchase 66 new jumbo cargo ships. So they're going huge into the air cargo logistics to overcome the bottlenecks of the boats and the ports and the whatnot. Like I said, I think they're salivating at the opportunity with the rest of the normal supply chains crumbling, and they're one of the few companies that have the resources to build a whole new, bigger, better, faster, private system that can work on a national scales.
They're also in this, as they start doing this vertical integration. That's classic antitrust matter right there. Like that is exactly what broke up Standard Oil and all those things. When you start vertically integrating and you control the entire chain, where they're going to start buying manufacturers if they haven't already, and they control everything from top to bottom, then that's, if they don't break up the if they don't use Hart-Scott to break up that entire vertical integration, well, then I don't know what the antitrust legislation is for. But also, why don't we have Walmart, which is one of the largest distributors in the world? Why don't we have Walmart, Target, and other, of those types of stores combining forces to create an alternate supply chain and try and undercut them? Like, I mean, I just don't really understand why these other companies aren't actually doing something to combat it, as opposed to just, I mean, even if you're copying it, oh, they're buying stuff, let's put in other
I
bids so it costs them a
wait,
fraction.
wait. There has to be an outcome to it, Alexander. It's not just that you're doing the vertical integration, and there's plenty of vertical integration that isn't antitrust. It's the outcome. Is it? And right
Yeah,
now, the problem with it to consumers, and actually the supply chain is going to benefit consumers. So it's the damage remedy. So they're going to argue we're not already in this area of supply chain. This area, they're going to carve that out, and they're going to say, and it's a benefit to consumers. That's probably also a benefit to retailers. Buying out the mom and pops and competing against them is a detriment to the manufacturers, right? To them. But I understand that antitrust is not designed to protect that yet. That it's focused on consumer focus. So this is the whole thing with what's her name, the new cabinet member that's on them.
Con.
Khan. Yeah, thank you. Lena Khan, sorry, just woke up. Yeah, and that's her focus, is that you've got to shift your antitrust paradigms here, because those are designed for again, an old world and not these big tech giants. And it's classic Amazon, to Alexander's point. This is classic Amazon, is to take something that's a cost and make it a profit center. So they're going to use that supply chain and actually make money on it, same as they did with Amazon Cloud, et cetera.
Well,
that's
it should
interesting.
be known Amazon needs reinvent. I'm sorry, FedEx needs reinventing, and so does UPS. So, doing a 21st century, I would want Amazon to do a 21st century logistics company. So, there are a lot of things, that maybe they'd be best off doing.
Wouldn't it be
Correct.
interesting though
Correct.
if you wouldn't that be interesting though if they ended up if the retailers ended up finding a way to like bulk buy and get reduced cost from Amazon, and then use that as their supply chain, so they became the supply chain to their competitors? That'd be interesting if that was actually something that, like, that would be the like a quick and dirty regulator solution, right? But it does end up impacting consumers if what they end up doing is results in higher prices to consumers. Once assuming so One thing is, if they're raising prices at all, then that is a harm to consumers. But if what they're doing is going to own the distribution chain so much that they can't create an alternative, like there isn't an end point where someone says, okay, well, now we're going to loosen up the flow of cargo and it's going to ship again and we can create our normal supply chain. If Amazon then controls the supply chain, then it's impossible to tell, relatively speaking, whether or not there's a cost to consumers, because there's no alternative. The cost is the cost to consumers. So it's presumed that they're making more profit off of it than they would if there were competition. They would actually have to reduce their margins. Now they can maximize their margins if there's no alternative, and they prevent an alternative from reforming.
Right, right. So
Alexandra.
put
Oh,
that way. Let me just put that in the lingo. So two things, a couple things there. Quick and dirty by regulators. That's an oxymoron that doesn't exist. That will never happen. But
That's true. But
that's
it's
one. Two, yeah. Barriers to entry is what Alexander's saying. Alexander's saying here is that they're taking over the world and they're enhancing and building barriers to entry. Absolutely true, and that is monopolistic behavior. That is one factor. And again, what you're saying is it's going to be hard to show that they're making it challenging for consumers, that they're increasing cost to consumers. They're probably actually driving down costs to consumers at the expense of putting everybody else out of business, right? So the harm is to other manufacturers and retailers, which they are doing. They're putting smaller mom and pops and much larger out of business. They use their algorithms to find what sells, which they have all that data. Then they go into that market, create competing products. And so, yes, it is detrimental, but antitrust doesn't directly address that yet. So it's your points are there, but it doesn't fit into the current laws well, and there is some shakeup that's needed. Again, to Dr. Francine's point, which is that FedEx and UPS are a bit antiquated, and Amazon is known for being incredibly more efficient and getting things to your door and trackable. So maybe they do need a shakeup. So there's benefits to it, but again, it's a new paradigm that you need to look at because they are taking over the world.
I mean,
There's
I
one
think
more
that
thing.
the one real issue, though, is that you don't know. You assume they're driving down costs, but you don't know. We don't know. The other thing is that Amazon has already been shown in a lot of instances to have very discriminatory algorithms, right? They do dynamic pricing, not static pricing. So some consumers may have lower costs, but a big chunk of consumers have increased costs, and they're doing that all the time. They're constantly doing that. So and there's a lot of studies that have shown statistically that the chunk of the population who's paying more are like our taxes, the ones who are able to pay less, right? Like they're not able to.
Wait, I want to add to that, Alexander, just another point in exactly that, because there's that, and then also the thing with all of this stuff, they're putting the screws on manufacturers to develop this stuff, right? So they're which is something that we do. We can offshore that development or onshore it and not pay people. So it's not just the cost of the end consumer. A lot of those costs aren't absorbed in that end consumer's price tag. They're absorbed by the either the climate change or the worker that's wages are pushed down, or the and again, shipping things around the world if they're developed elsewhere. But there's a lot of externalities that aren't borne by the end consumer there, or even the
But you
company.
don't know that they aren't,
Right.
and they might be inefficiently born because dynamic pricing creates so much discrepancy that it actually is some of that. I imagine it will be like part of the of Amazon buyers are like the smoking population. Inelastic demand, they don't have a lot of power in terms of being able to shift prices. They end up paying the higher prices. Everything gets transferred over to those. And then the other part that has more options has more elastic demand. And so they're the ones that can then can push back and say, no, we're not taking this higher pricing. But in the end, it's very difficult to tell if they control it, assuming that they're reducing cost to the end consumer. I think is not a safe assumption. I think in the end, what is the goal of Amazon? It's not to be beneficial to the world like Santa. It is to make money. And we have to assume that they're going to maximize their profits whenever and wherever they can. And this provides the opportunity to maximize at several different choke points.
But aren't we like sort of missing the whole point of Amazon? Amazon's a big data player, right? I mean, products can be moved by anyone. They're just basically also a fulfillment center. If you think about it, you mentioned Federal Express and Pure Later and all the UPS. Pure Later wasn't mentioned. Sorry, that's Canadian. The point is, like they strategically ship their packages as well based on how heavy a package is. Based on they'll put it through a heavier package. They'll waste the fuel of the FedEx or UPS, those companies, but a lighter package, they would put it on their own jets because they're strategic. They know the data. They know which package they're shipping. And I'm just wondering, though, if you pull back more, Amazon's, I don't know if any company ever in the history, well, this is the internet, but any company in the history has ever been integrated into not only the data centers of the public, but also the government, because they're actually well intertwined with not only international affairs, the government affairs, now intelligence services, as we discovered yesterday, their purchases with the small companies. So I'm
That's
wondering,
the
like,
real danger.
right. That's what I'm like. I love the fact that Amazon's doing what they're doing, right? They do actually are good competition, but the fact that they actually have control of all this data is what scares me more. than
Well,
anything. Because I think, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, in the U.S. there's a control system in the Department of Commerce with CFIUS that would actually, at a certain point, that would trigger them doing a constant review, and that they may that is like one small section of it's not really eminent domain, but it's kind of like that where they can say, no, you can't do that because that presents too much risk. So there is actually a system in place that would deal with whether, like, if they're dealing with government things, with anything that deals with national security, anything that deals with too much information about enterprise, not individuals, right? But enterprise, because that puts the US at a competitive disadvantage. That's actually within there too. So it's an interesting system.
I found an article that from Bloomberg that just came out October 13th, so 2 days ago. And it mentions that during COVID, Amazon started chartering flights out of China. And now basically they kind of like the asymmetrical advantage that they've gotten out of that. And now they're just trying to buy up all the flights now that COVID's over, that they've seen it's kind of, they've gotten all the data from that. And now they're going to start buying up all the planes they can.
And they'll
And
get it the cheap too. They'll get it really cheap, right?
yeah, but now might be a good time. Yeah. The next big article is, let's see here. Bloomberg says they have sources that Apple has hired its former employee and co-founder of speaker startup Sing to lead HomePod software efforts. And we read about this new Sing company. There was a headline, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, that there was this new hardware company called Sing, spelled SYNG, of a former somebody who was very senior at Apple who had left to create this new hardware company called Sing and made this really beautiful devices, kind of HomePod like speakers, like very high quality devices. And now sources say that Apple has hired him back to come back and lead the HomePod software efforts. And one must wonder what kind of salary they must have offered that person. Maybe even acquired a startup to do that. Quite a common thing. That the next one is Google rolls out continuous scrolling for English language mobile search results in the United States. So now you won't only get 10 blue links and on lots of different pages as they've done. You'll just have infinite scrolling. The next one is the Washington Post. In a letter to Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, 14 U.S. state attorney generals demand details on vaccine misinformation per the whistleblower's leaked documents and Facebook's X-check, or cross-check as they call it, which shields VIP users. Led by Connecticut, more than a dozen state attorney generals are asking Facebook for information related to the whistleblower's leaked documents, particularly about vaccine misinformation. Next up, Financial Times, PitchBook, tech investors and employees have netted more than $500 billion from U.S. IPOs in this year so far through September. Next up, Daily Mail. A UK judge rules in favor of a woman who claimed her neighbor's Ring doorbell breached her privacy, potentially paving the way for similar lawsuits because you can't face your cameras at your neighbor's private property. Or in this case, it looks like she might get $150,000, which will pave the way for similar lawsuits. Yes, exactly. That's what happens. Other people, when they see that headline, will say, my neighbor has a camera pointed at my property. I would like $150,000 as well. The next one from CBS San Francisco. Residents of a quiet San Francisco street say that Google's Waymo self-driving cars are flocking to their street throughout the day, seemingly confused by a dead end. And I'm trying to recall which street it was, but it's one very specific street that is confusing these cars. On 15th Avenue in the middle of San Francisco in the Richmond district, which is a very well-known part of San Francisco where there's a lot of houses over there, essentially, and near Golden Gate Park. and the Waymos are confused, and they all end up at the end of this cul-de-sac trying to turn around. It's kind of a weird.
Must be a site.
So they, no doubt, the engineers will address it and fix that issue and train the cars to let them know not to go down there. And there's a video clip where there's a news reporter doing a report from there showing all the cars there. So I will tweet this out so you can have a good laugh at this video report from CBS San Francisco. A bunch of confused robots. The next one, a staffer. Oh, we read that one. Toronto-based Rose Rocket, which makes cloud-based transportation management software, raises $25 million. Wall Street Journal says, according to sources, JANA Partners takes a stake in Macy's and is urging Macy's to spin off its e-commerce business. And Roblox outlines plans to add more realism to player avatars, introduces new in-game monetization streams, also adds NFT-like limited edition items, and more. And GitLab closes up 35% in its NASDAQ debut, giving it a $14.9 billion market cap. And for those who don't know, that's where developers host all of their code, basically. And Twitter will begin offering paid ticketed spaces to Android users in the US. And also Twitter now rolling out they have Twitter Spaces. Everyone can use Twitter Spaces. However, Twitter Spaces currently is lacking the hallway that Clubhouse users are very familiar with. It's perhaps the glue that makes Clubhouse work. It would be very hard to use Clubhouse without the hallway. Well, believe it or not, Twitter Spaces is kind of like Clubhouse, but without the hallway. It makes it very difficult to find rooms to jump into. They are now rolling out their hallway this week or next week on Apple devices, and then apparently Android devices the week after that. And so that's going to be very interesting to see how that impacts the use of Twitter Spaces and how it might impact the use of Clubhouse. The next one is an Israeli-based company, IronSource, which provides user acquisition tech for app developers. Acquires Tapjoy for $400 million. Short-form video app called Clash is relaunching as a place for creators to monetize their top fans from bigger platforms like TikTok. Well, TikTok's trying to let them monetize as well, so good luck with that. HTC announces their Vive Flow VR headset for $499. The FTC notifies 700 companies that they could face penalties for using deceptive reviews, like fake 5-star reviews and whatnot. And that is your big headlines of today, Friday. Just a quick refresh. Tesla starts offering insurance in Texas. Here it is. Oh shit, there it goes. We said that we predicted this would come, that Tesla would start offering insurance because they've got all the data to do it. This could make their stock go boom. Here's the headline. Tesla starts offering insurance in Texas using drivers' real-time driving behavior and their safety score. Tesla has now officially launched its insurance product using real-time driver behavior. The product is only available in Texas for now.
So, Tyler, can you imagine being the insurance company that goes up against Tesla in an accident when they have all the data and the footage, and your car, the driver on your car says, I don't know what happened. It's not going to be fun for the other side.
Wow. We predicted this would come.
But I think that I have like a memory of insurance doing that. Like one of the ways that they were cutting down on it, there is an insurance company that has done this, that does like they price their insurance. It's not dynamic pricing because that didn't exist at the time. It wasn't as easy to do, but there is something that they there's another outside insurance company that has been doing this on a much smaller scale than Tesla will do, I'm sure.
Tyler, can you
I'm
please
more
check the hand
speaking to the
raised?
I'm
Thank
more
you.
speaking to the dynamics of the intra insurance agency warfare that happens. You know, when you get in an accident, especially in California. Well, you know this in California, it's a no fault state, right? And uh, then the insurance dukes it out, and at some point you figure out what happens, and you take your car to get it repaired. Now you have Tesla, who's got all this information and literally a recording of the accident, and the other side has nothing.
No,
You
no,
know,
for
so
sure. They could actually start subpoenaing those records. I was actually just referring to the concept itself. Like
oh
this
yeah,
is
yeah,
something
yeah.
that we've done before, but that would be interesting if that became a new evidentiary standard where basically the police were entitled to take the where they say, you have body cams or whatever, this is your car's body cam essentially, and is able to see exactly what happened and when it happened, and that then there's no trials. So it's basically like, well, this is what your car said. And so then you'd have to prove that there was a data collection flaw. So that would be really hard, right? Because then you'd have to say, well, the record says this, but the data, there's a problem in recording the data. And that would put people at a huge disadvantage. Oh, so maybe this is something people need to be concerned about.
Is it driver-facing cameras turned on right now? Like, is it collecting data?
Amazing
I
Tesla.
always assume.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Okay, perfect.
they have 8 cameras all around the car all the time, even when it's parked.
No, he
Yeah,
said
and so
driver facing, internal.
Watching the driver. So I'm just wondering, most of these accidents have been caused by drivers not taking the hands off the wheel, right?
Well, it's all
Let's hope you don't like pick your nose or anything. When become very sensitive about what you
funny you
do
say
they
while
would
that.
in the
I,
car.
they
I, I got a speeding ticket one time from a camera, caught me picking my nose. That was kind of funny. The
Someone in the audience who can't speak because they're at work says that they have a lot of experience dealing with Amazon and automotive aftermarket. And around 12 years ago, when they started with them, they very matter of factly said they'd be willing to lose um, it looks like 1 million a month. I'm not sure if that's correct, but to own our niche of clutches in the long run, in addition to running out a lot of little guys out of business, consumers now only have lower quality auto parts available to them, and it's a serious safety risk.
That's a
So
huge problem on
yeah,
Amazon. The parts are crazy bad. I mean, it's like even the struts. There's a huge problem with that. Chinese dumping a lot of crappy struts out there, and it's not great.
I don't even know what struts are, but I'm mad about
Oh,
that.
sorry, your suspensions. Most important. Sorry. Yuck.
yeah, strangely, Tesla's only up like less than 2% today. You would think on that news it might do a little more than that. And also, yeah, with the autonomous driving, your insurance
I
should
think
go,
we forgot
according to
the bonus
Tesla,
driving news,
it's
right?
far safer to have the autonomous driving. So your insurance should really go down quite considerably if the car is driving autonomously and it's much safer than a human driving. Then your insurance should be less than normal human insurance. So next up is, let's see here. U.S. Treasury says there was $590 million in suspicious ransomware activity in the first half of 2021, exceeding the entire amount of 2020, which was only $400 million. So it looks like we might double last year's ransomware amounts. Yeah, we covered that. Yep, those are the big, boring headlines of today. Now we get into the fun, juicy tweets. Like this one. The Miami, Evan found this one, that the Miami mayor wants to pay city workers with Bitcoin. Moving forward with a proposal to pay city workers in Bitcoin. And Evan also found this one from MSN, that newly discovered bat viruses give hints to COVID origins. In the summer of 2020, half a year into the coronavirus pandemic, scientists traveled into the forests of northern Laos to catch bats that might harbor close relatives to the COVID-19. Close cousins to the pathogen. In the dead of the night, they used mist nets and canvas traps to snag the animals as they emerged from the nearby caves, gathered samples of saliva, urine, and feces, then released them back into the darkness. The samples turned out to contain coronaviruses, which the scientists studied in high-security biosafety labs using specialized protective gear and air filters. 3 of the Laos coronaviruses were unusual. They carried a molecular hook in their surface that was very similar to the hook of the virus that causes COVID-19. Their hook allowed them to latch onto human cells. That's bad. It is even better than early strains of COVID, says Mark Elliott, a virologist at the Pasteur Institute of Paris who led the study, referring to how well the hook of the Lao coronavirus binds to human cells. The study was posted online last month and has not yet been published. Virus experts are buzzing about the discovery. Some suspect that these SARS-CoV-2-like viruses may already be infecting people from time to time, causing only mild and limited outbreaks. But under the right circumstances, the pathogens could give rise to COVID-19-like pandemics. The findings also have significant implications for the charged debate over COVID's origins, experts say. Some people have speculated that COVID's impressive ability to infect human cells could not have evolved through a natural spillover from an animal, but the new findings seem to suggest otherwise. That really puts to bed any notion that this virus had to have been concocted or somehow manipulated in a lab to be so good at infecting humans, says Michael Warroby, a University of Arizona virologist who is not involved in the work.
But what are they saying is the method of transfer? Are these bats biting people? Are they eating the bats? Like, how is this transferring? Because bats and humans don't necessarily, like, generally don't mix. So how are they saying this transfers? Just because
they're not saying it has. They're saying it could have transferred. And then your question is, well, if it could have, precisely how? Yeah. Yeah. If you eat fruit that the bat had bitten or something like that, and you get bat saliva.
Yeah. I mean, I would just want to see what kind of numbers they have on the likelihood of something like that happening. I mean, assuming that they're, is it a type of fruit bat?
Yeah,
One of the
that
vectors.
enough. No way. Some random virologist from the University of Arizona says this puts to bed the debate. I mean, this just sounds like, I don't know who the French Institute is and how there's a lot of, you got to look at the source. Is it reputable, etc.
Remember that bat guano is one of the most effective fertilizers, so I don't know if that's a definite vector, but that may be one. John's here. Maybe he's got a comment. No, maybe he's busy.
Well, they found a COVID-19 like pathogen in a bat that they say can, bind with humans, so it could cause a bat to human transfer. The question is how. It's not. I mean, me living in Thailand, where I see bats on a daily basis, nearly every night. I mean, every time I walk at night with my iPhone on, they swoop down right between me and my iPhone. That's a daily thing for me. So if you were to go and be surrounded by bat feces, or I can imagine that could happen if you found yourself near an area full of bats.
I don't know. Yeah. We lived in a house that had bats in the attic. It's very funny. We used to have crowds of people who would like stare at our house, and when I was a kid, and watch the bats come and go. And but they are scared of you, generally speaking.
Oh yeah,
most bats
totally harmless.
are not eager.
Yeah, walking around at night. Yeah.
Yeah, but when
I mean, there
sleeping...
wasn't like an outbreak around our house that I'm aware of any particular type of disease. I think that there might be a little bit of a tenuous connection there, but
yeah.
But it's something, I guess.
So did some quick like deep diving while the more expert people chime in, but I found that the bats, it's not a direct transmission. It's through basically their feces, and they're eating fruits and stuff. As Tyler was also mentioning, the remnants. What happens is the swine, basically pigs, palm civets, dromedary camels are known to have a connection to the bats' habits, so they actually can get contaminated, and then that gets into humans. So the camel meat, in terms of civet, cats, and swine, and we know from previous diseases, right? Everything from MERS to and I forget what there's SARS. Everything else has been due to some link to bats, right? And so this is all through a secondary animal that we consume as humans. And that's, I think, wet markets was one thing. And another thing is also fertilizers, not as much. In Australia, they have a guidance about bats, and they say that even swimming in pools and stuff is not a danger. But it's just be careful of getting bitten by bats more than anything. It's more the other transmission through the other animals that's more concerning, according to research that I found so far.
If I may, I don't know if most people realize this, but 3 out of every 4 new or emerging infectious diseases in humans can be traced back to animals. And this is data according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And zoonotic diseases are illnesses that are caused when harmful germs such as viruses, bacteria, fungi, and parasites are transmitted from animals to humans. And um, furthermore, scientists have applied AI machine learning to help predict which viruses might spread from animals to humans. So this is just some factoids.
So
And
there's
don't blame the bat, because bats are important for the ecosystem too, right? It's just our practices in the contamination and everything else is what's causing, and encroachment, by the way, that's another big issue for causing all of these problems. Sorry.
It says when SARS-CoV-2, which is COVID-19, first came to light, its closest known relative was a bat coronavirus that Chinese researchers found in 2016 in a mine in southern China, which was called RATG13, which shares 96% of its genome with COVID-19. And then the researchers and his colleagues set out to find new coronaviruses. They traveled to northern Laos, 150 miles from the mine where the Chinese researchers had found RATG13. Over 6 months, they caught 645 bats belonging to 45 different species. And that is where they found this virus version that they say can jump from bat to human. So yeah, and then the question is how, and then it certainly got something to do with either fruit and feces or whatever. But it happened to these Chinese researchers who went into a mine where there were bats with the feces, and they inhaled the stuff, and they got a very near cousin of COVID-19 back in 2016.
So in other words, it's not good luck for a bat to poop on your head like other birds.
Not really.
It's not. No. Yeah, I think the bat caves are really like high, like dried up, and it's higher, aerosolized too, right? So I think it should be okay, unless it bites you, maybe. Oh, by the way, another thing that's happening is leprosy is being, usually leprosy takes a lot of contact to be transmitted. But recently they found that monkeys are developing leprosy in the forests, and they feel that humans are the cause of the monkeys developing leprosy. It just came out recently, the article.
And guys, I just realized something real quick. That's why they call it batshit crazy, right?
The next one, who made that really interesting point about the source? The Pasteur Institute is the team who was doing this in Laos. And the Wikipedia page for Pasteur Institute says it's a French nonprofit private foundation dedicated to the study of biology, microorganisms, founded in 1887. For over a century, Institut Pasteur has researched infectious diseases. The Worldwide Biomedical Research Organization based in Paris was the first to isolate the HIV virus that caused AIDS. So they're probably pretty good. Named after Louis Pasteur. So it was formed in 1887. Since 1908, 10 of its scientists have been awarded Nobel Prizes. So I'm going to say they're pretty good. The next one is where did it go? Oh shit. Oh yeah, we're doing the tweets. Here we go. So that was the batshit crazy one. And then the next one is there are nearly 50 harmful effects linked to social media, a study finds. Okay, what are they? There are nearly 50 harmful effects linked to social media use. Researchers from the University of Technology, Sydney, have discovered 46 specific harmful effects of using social networks. These include physical detriments, mental health problems, impacts on work and social productivity, and security or privacy issues. Uh-oh. What was that audio sound? It says study authors broke the dozens of social media dangers down into 6 specific fields. Cost of social exchange, such as depression, anxiety, and jealousy. Annoying content. These harms appear when users view content that annoys, upsets, or irritates them. This typically includes disturbing, violent, sexual, or obscene content. Privacy concerns. There are threats to personal privacy related to storing, repurposing, or sharing personal information with third parties. Security threats. These are harms from fraud or deception which can emerge from phishing or social engineering scams, cyberbullying, and low performance. This refers to the negative impact social media use can have on job or academic performance. Here's the quote. Much of the research on social network use has focused on its benefits and potential, but we are interested in comprehensively identifying negative impacts that have been associated with social media use, says PhD candidate of the study, Leila Baroun. We reviewed more than 50 research articles published between 2003 and 2018. Some of the most common negative impacts include psychological harms such as jealousy, loneliness, anxiety, and reduced self-esteem, as well as things like exposure to malicious software and phishing risks. The findings appear in the Journal of Global Information Management. Next one, Intel's new 8K HDR internet live streams. A groundbreaking 19 days of live streaming from the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games showed 8K HDR is ready for mainstream. Are we ready for 8K HDR live streams? Holy shit. That's some...
First of all, how many people have
So
4K?
there is a thing with 8K though. So I love this shit, right? I love geeky stuff. I'd buy an 8K TV just in a blink of an eyelid. But you can't really sit practically close enough to an 8K TV to be worth it. You literally can't see the difference at a normal viewing distance. It's just a kind of bit of a flaw with it. There's been some articles about this, how it's unnecessarily high. So you go in the store, you stand like, say, a big TV, maybe a at least 65-inch TV, and you stand like half a meter from it. It looks amazing, absolutely amazing. But if you were to sit back on a sofa, the standard like 2 meters away, get 2 or 3 people looking at it, you'd have to have a screen size of over 100 inches in order to benefit from that. I'll do a little tweet of a really cool diagram that helps you look it up. So you can be just straight up wasting your money, which doesn't matter, but it's a lot of extra bandwidth. But when it comes to like computer gaming and the like, rendering at 8K starts to be completely crazy in the circumstance of a TV. Not the case of a monitor. Monitors you can sit close enough to. But just a caution, you need to have a freaking huge TV or be sitting very, very close to it in order to be worth it.
Ben, isn't that the biggest problem, the source, though? Because I think even with the gaming, you need the video cards are not going to be able to handle it. And the source, I mean, we don't have enough. And
no, they
the
can.
sources are
in
not
fact,
great either.
A modern RTX 3090 or whatever can produce 8K gaming content, and a lot of games actually. And games are one of the best places to get 8K content from. But TV in 8K would be amazing. But this is a more fundamental problem about the foveal resolution of your eye and the angle that the pixels subtend at a given distance. It's simply, you just cannot, however good your vision is, unless you're wearing like magnifying glasses, very magnifying glasses, you can't see the difference between 4K and 8K at 2 meters from a 65-inch screen, which would be a fairly typical. And 2 meters from a 65-inch screen, that's quite close. Yeah. So just look it up. I'll do a little chart. I'll do a little tweet of a chart and just make sure that it's you're actually going to be able to see the difference. You totally can see the difference between 1080p and 4K massively. But 8K, Jess, you've got to have a big TV or sit super close.
Having spent a couple of years in the 8K 5G ecosystem, and probably to Ben's point, the primary use cases seem to be in commercial settings. Like when you take a look at 8K displays in operating rooms where doctors are using some sort of camera for arthroscopies or other procedures, the difference between 4K and 8K is quite noticeable at particular ranges with that camera. So I've been around a lot of the different solutions with regard to 8K, and I would say that most of the best use cases are not consumer use cases.
Yeah, I think
I totally agree. Yeah, Japan. I'm Japanese living in Japan, and Japan is a country which loves great crazy hardware, and HK is kind of booming, but it should be used for the surgery or other those very different uses, and not for consumer uses. There is no software, only NHK broadcast on, say, 1 hour, 2 hours per day or maybe per week, and it's ridiculous.
yeah, that's right. Because I think it's known that Japanese houses are not that big, so I believe it's not for home use as well. It's more for commercial and industrial use.
It's more
Well, I
for.
imagine it'll be.
Advertising,
It's
billboards.
also for no. What do you call it? The VR, where you need in VR, it's a kind of becoming the
Oh,
standard.
absolutely.
Yeah.
In VR, you actually need about 24K, which, by the way, when you go from 4K to
Yeah,
8K, you
VR
quadruple
is
your.
a different world. So
Yeah, VR is a different world. To get anywhere near sight, you need to be like 24K. And by the way, when you go from 4K to 8K, you've not doubled, you've quadrupled the number of pixels, right? An 8K TV is four 4K TVs arranged in a grid.
yeah.
You go to
My
24K, you've got
my opinion is
shitload
even
more.
4K is not necessary for consumers.
Oh,
But
I don't
it's
know.
all right.
Oh,
It's all right.
Oh no, I'm a snob.
If
Like
you
I'd really
like,
like
no, I
crazy
please
for
think the
them to go
buy
to
source
it.
is bad
1080p.
for you.
Yeah,
So
no, I disagree with that, but because you really can see the difference if you're a snob between 1080p and 4K. But
Oh, easily.
what I'm saying here is that you physically and physiologically can't see the difference between 4K and 8K unless you're so really, really close to the screen. And when you are, it's super absorbing. I'm sure you've all been in a shop and seen a big 8K TV on demo, but notice how close people are when they look at it and when they're marveling. They are so close that it would be totally impractical to be that close in your living room. That's the point. Great for one person, not so good for several people, unless you've got a massive TV on the wall, And then you're talking, you don't even have TVs that big yet. So it's kind of odd. The purpose of a TV is for multiple people to view an image. And if multiple people want to view it, it would have to be so big that it would be impractical. Totally, we need this technology for VR, for professional usage, for surgery, for all that stuff. Absolutely.
I think another perspective is, or another point is just we are getting to the threshold where I remember, I think it was 12 megapixels for digital stills, or plus or minus a few fistful of megapixels, where just you're getting to the point of the threshold of how our eye just has evolved to interpret what we see. So that's one piece of it, is just how we're approaching it. So then the next question is, how much waste is there in terms of building all these digital devices and just, again, incorporating the green footprint of that part of how we live. So that's another unspoken thing, because we just keep talking about the Moore's Law and up to the right, up to the right.
I
so
mean, Apple.
sorry, do you mind if I jump in? I was going to say, yeah, like the other aspect, and I'd love to hear from those who are knowledgeable in VR, like Ben and others, isn't at that level, isn't the refresh rate becoming more important? Obviously, we're starting to see more and more
Yeah, I was gonna.
phones and tablets and
I was gonna
laptops
say,
with a
yeah,
higher
that's
refresh rate. I mean, watching a Hollywood movie like Bond in like 120 hertz doesn't make any sense. You want that 24 FPS frames per second for a movie. That's kind of standard. I don't think that's going away. I mean, I have friends who have returned their 4K HDR TVs because they thought they were busted because they just looked too home video like because of the high refresh rate on some of the content they were watching. Yeah, so I'm just wondering if and
yeah.
there's the refresh rate, and then one more thing, and then I'll stop. And the other thing is also nits and brightness, right? yes, we don't all have massive living rooms for our 8K TV, but also do we have bright and sort of dark enough rooms for us to watch some of this amazing content? So it's not just about the resolution. I think there's refresh rate and nit brightness that come into play more and more now.
Well, for a long time, consumers have been buying pixels because it's an easy number. It's a big number. They've been doing it with cameras. They've been buying megapixels. You know, a professional photographer who wants a really good camera to work well in low light is going to go for a 12 or 18 megapixel camera. They're going to specifically choose lower resolution because if the resolution's higher, the pixels are smaller, physically smaller. And if they're physically smaller for a given sensor size, they're less sensitive to light. So they're a bit shit to light sensitivity. So you've got smartphones going, I've got a 100 megapixel camera, and professionals buying a 12 or 18 megapixel SLR, you know, because they want quality pixels. And to your point in reverse with a TV, you want quality pixels. You get to a limit of resolution. Brightness is important to a limit. Watching a video last night that involved some welding and it was pretty bright. Do we actually want the TV? Do we want to have to put a welding mask on when we watch a video of welding? You know, there's a limit to the brightness that you need because at some point it's damaging to your eyes. Refresh rate, super important, does make a big difference in games. It's not really worth conflating the like 24 frames looks and feels like a film. That's a different issue and a stylistic choice. And a lot of TVs can switch into 24 frames a second if you want that feeling. That's a bit like the arguments by Valve hi-fi enthusiasts that the Valve sound better. It's like, well, yeah, you just like that type of distortion. You know, it's the 24 frames is you just like that type of distortion. It's what you're used to. You can always throttle your TV down. So I do think progress in frame rate is important because reality doesn't have a, you know, until you get down to the Planck time, it doesn't have a limited frame rate. So range of colors, color accuracy, range of colors, number of colors, difference between the brightest and the darkest. You know, OLEDs are completely dark. So the question is, how bright can you go? There's a limit. You don't want to burn your eyes. So it's pretty fascinating. There is plenty of distance to go.
And Ben,
my thoughts.
Most people don't care though, right? Most people don't even know that their TV or their device can get to a certain beautiful, you know, programmed level. I'm sure you've gone to people's houses and gone, is there something wrong with your TV? You've got a great TV, but what's going on, right? Like the settings, most people don't care. They just buy the TV, they look at the specs, oh yeah, it's great. And they have nothing else to compare with when they get it home. And I think, and even YouTube, they're used to watching crappy video on YouTube sometimes, right? They don't know that you could set up the higher grade, right? The 4K grade on YouTube sometimes. So I think for the broader market, these things sell. These things will sell, but they won't be used to the full ability. Like even the iPhones, most people don't need the iPhone. The quality of the graphics, the photography, I mean, everything. Most people don't underutilize their technology, right? So I'm sure that these things will still sell based on the numbers.
Oh, they will. The real tragedy, though, is when somebody throws away an older TV.
Yes.
Out of ignorance. And now, if that's thrown away and taken up by somebody else who then enjoys it and has gratitude for it and uses it, cool. But if that literally ends up in a dumpster, that's a real shame because somebody wanted a higher pixel count. So again, it always comes back to education. I always say that because that's my thing. But I think, you know, understanding as a consumer what you're buying, what you need, what the differences are, it's kind of important, I think.
I think that's a key word, what you need.
Yeah. Okay, here we go into more tweets. Harvard Business Review has done a study on what's driving the Great Resignation. Based on U.S. Bureau and Labor Statistics, 4 million Americans quit their jobs in July, 4 million in 1 month. Resignations peaked in April and have remained abnormally high, but who's behind it? And the results are in. Employees between 30 to 45-year-old have been the greatest increase in resignation rates, with an average increase of more than 20% from 2020 to 2021. So a notable boost of people resigning in the 30 to 45 age group, and with turnover typically highest among younger employees. Our study found that over the last year, resignation actually decreased for workers in the 20 to 25 age range. Interestingly, resignation rates also fell for those in the 60 to 70 age range. And there were a few factors that can help explain why the increase in resignations has been largely driven by mid-level employees. First, it's possible that the shift to remote work has led employees or employers to feel that hiring people with little experience would be riskier than usual, and this would create greater demand for mid-career employees, thus giving them greater leverage in securing new positions. And resignations are highest in the tech and healthcare industries. There you go. Then the next one is that the Harvard Gazette says that Harvard researchers are using chemical dyes, to store data. In a new paper, Harvard chemists described the data storage method that uses a mixture of 7 fluorescent dyes to save files. So just tweeting that out if you want to know how they're doing that. And then Aaron shares in this one that McDonald's will now serve Beyond Meat McPlant burgers in select U.S. locations next month. After announcing a deal with Beyond Meat back in February, McDonald's this morning announced that it will set to start selling plant-based Beyond Meat burgers, joining our friends at Subway with their tuna-less tuna sandwiches.
I'm surprised they didn't do something on their own. Being such a large corporation, then like outsourcing it to another company, that's odd.
Yeah. And then,
but it deserves applause, right? I think they're the biggest meat wholesale, whatever. They're the biggest. They're responsible for, I think, the largest
Producers,
part of the producers. So that's a start. That's a start. So that's.
I'm sure they
Burger
were.
King has been selling Impossible Burgers
Right.
for a long time.
Yeah.
But people don't even realize those plant burgers have more sodium than the traditional burgers, so not always healthy. So
just healthier for the planet. But yeah, the education on that needs to get out there. Hopefully they'll tweak that. That's a tweakable parameter.
So Stanford researchers have built a $400 self-navigating smart cane for the vision disabled using tools from autonomous vehicles. The research team has built an augmented cane which helps people detect and identify obstacles, move easily around those objects, and follow routes. And a Chicago startup fundraising continues at an incredible pace. Chicago startups have raised $5.5 billion thus far in 2021, and that is incredible. By the way, that would put them 2 years ago, pre-COVID, $5.5 billion would put them easily in the top 10 and close into the top 5 cities globally. In 2021, it puts them in the top 20 for sure. Probably approaching the top 10. So that's tremendous for Chicago. Which is
so Tyler, you're telling me we should accept the invite to the accelerator we got invited to and declined out of Chicago.
Not necessarily, but that's really impressive for a city who's not really conventionally named as a startup hub. So
yeah, that's why it's super surprising to me. It's like, oh, Chicago. Okay, what do you guys have to offer us? Now I know.
The next one is a report that here's our chance to play our favorite new show, Tech News Jeopardy. Let's get the volume up for this one. What % of consumers prefer to speak with AI to help avoid long hold times when holding on the phone? For a service representative, which % would prefer to speak with an AI?
It's pretty low.
0.
10.
5%.
20.
11.
Can you define the generation of AI versus the expert system that powers the response system? I would say 50.
80% of consumers prefer to speak with AI to avoid long hold
I
time.
nailed it.
Wait a second. What age group here? Are we talking cognitively impaired? Are we talking like AI works in
They don't even know they're
patients who are...
talking to AI. 80 for sure. I do it all the time.
The part that he left out is that this is after being on hold for half an hour.
Messi, sorry for taking over your spot.
The survey also found that 91% of consumers reported that they've experienced poor customer service in the past 6 months. Well, that's easy to believe. I'm surprised it's not 100, but
I'm with you. Why isn't that 100?
yeah, the 80% seems surprising. However, I think going back to Jennifer's logical approach to things, we must look at the source, and in this case, the source is conducted by Replicant, and I think Replicant's in the business of selling AI and solving this problem.
Look, bias.
I think there's a very heavy bias based on the source. So that would explain it. And I'll tweet that out so you can check for yourself. So the next one is from Evan from the Daily Mail in the UK. What percentage of COVID survivors experience symptoms 6 months after recovery? According to researchers from Penn State, they found some percent. What percent? What percent of COVID-19 survivors will suffer from some sort of long-term symptoms up to 6 months after recovery?
33.3.
20.
25.
I think John has the data.
Whatever.
7.
1.
5.
20%.
Who got?
50.
Just under 40.
Oh, Cheryl
90.
wins at the last minute with 50%. At the
Where
buzzer.
is the source?
Cheryl.
What's the source?
The source is Penn
This is
State.
why we don't want it to be endemic.
It varies. It's under 40 as previous studies as well.
Brilliant.
Didn't China publish something that said 50?
Yep.
So, and that's definitively long COVID, right? 6 months.
We're on a bus that's still moving, so we haven't had the final studies yet.
And then the next one's from Daily Mail UK from John Capp in the audience. The Amazon, it says Bezos is told to testify to Congress as Amazon faces perjury claims. The Amazon founder has been told he should appear in front of the House Judiciary Committee after his general counsel denied using third-party data. Oh shit, this is going down, everybody. This was the headline, the main headline yesterday. By the way, is my mic still on?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, because my so we read a headline yesterday that Amazon was taking data of what the most popular items are in India and then going and making their own alternatives and promoting them above the people who were previously selling them, which is some really shady shit. Might not be illegal, but it's really shady. However, it did say in that article that Jeff Bezos himself testified in Congress that they don't do that. That was in the story. That was buried. That wasn't the headline, but that was mentioned in the article we read yesterday, that contradicted, that new revelation contradicts what Jeff Bezos had said under oath before Congress in a congressional hearing. So now the headline is Jeff Bezos faces subpoenas from Congress whether Amazon committed perjury by denying using third-party seller data to make its own products. Oh, shit. Oh, snap.
The food industry's been doing that for decades. They just used to just do the private labeling. So they would have the manufacturers, produce more, and they would put their own retail or private label brand. But this whole of, getting the information and competing as a producer with your vendors, that used to be an antitrust kind of concept.
No, it's totally legal to do it. You just can't lie about it when you're under oath that you're doing it. He said, we're not doing that. Well,
Mark Zuckerberg also lied when he was on a hearing last year about how Facebook is conducting its operations. And now when the documents are released, you can blatantly see that most of the things that he said was an utter lie. So not much of a surprise.
It's a felony, though, right, Tyler?
Let's read it. It says, at issue are statements by Amazon Associate General Counsel Nate Sutton, who denied under oath last August and in written testimony that Amazon used sensitive business information from independent sellers on its platform to develop products for Amazon to sell. The Wall Street Journal reported last month that Amazon did indeed use the data. It cited 20 former employees of Amazon's private label business. The letter was signed by representatives Nadler, chair of the Judiciary Committee, and the chair of the Antitrust Subcommittee, and a whole bunch of Democrats. It was also signed by Republican Representative Matt Gaetz. In the letter, the lawmakers raised the possibility of subpoena. We expect you, as chief executive officer, to testify before the committee, it said. Although we expect that you will testify on a voluntary basis, we reserve the right to resort to compulsory process if necessary. Oh, shit. The European Commission has also opened a probe into the practice of Amazon using data for its merchants to compete.
Tyler, I'm the John Cap that actually tweeted that to you, and the interesting thing, I watched him in Congress, and it was when they had all the leaders of, they had like four of the
Yeah.
FANG leaders,
Yep.
in front of Congress, and there was a woman, and I don't remember all of the details, but there was a woman that was on a video chat that had a complaint that basically that Amazon had done that to her company, and he played really dumb. He's like, geez, I'm gonna reach out to you. I'm gonna fix this. But it was kind of addressed in that hearing where he was called out on that by an actual retailer on the Amazon store.
Okay.
Wasn't that story from 2020 though? That was like last year that issue came up, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So
But how could you make, like, even if you have all these releases, right? How can a government make these people whole again? Like, these are mom and pop shops that have been destroyed, main streets that have been destroyed, right? I'm wondering, like, or industry. I mean, like small manufacturers who have been destroyed. Like, how after the fact, what's the use if you don't have regulations beforehand to prevent these, the real sort of the machinations that keep small communities going? I'm just wondering, like, how do we help them? Like, even if you bring all this news later, right?
That's a good question. The next article is from Heyman, who found some data from Canada about the increasing prices of things. For example, rent has increased 2.9%. Restaurant prices are up 4.7%. Electricity up 5.2%. So, in a two-part series of Tech News Jeopardy, what has increased the most?
Gasoline.
Water.
Toilet paper.
Rent.
Properties.
Home prices.
Properties. Real estate.
Yes, real
Cupcakes.
estate. There you go, Cheryl.
Okay. Who said gas?
Me.
John wins, but there's still, that was second place with 42%. So it went, electricity has gone up 5.2%, appliances are up 7%, new cars are up almost 8%, meat and poultry and fish proteins up 10%, furniture 11%, TVs 13%, hotels 18%, used cars 24%, gas 42%, and rental cars at the top of the list with 43%.
Wow.
You know why? A lot of the rental agencies sold off their cars during COVID.
Oh.
Mm.
Supply and demand. I've heard about that shit.
And now they can't replace them because there's not enough supply.
Dr. Fran sends in the next one from the New York Times about the Framework laptop. Could revolutionize repairability. We hope it does. From the New York Times, Framework is promising the kind of upgradable laptop that plenty of people have demanded for years. And so far, things look great, mostly of a modular laptop, which makes it super crazy simple for anyone to upgrade the memory or the processor or the screen of their laptops.
That's a sustainability story right there. That's awesome. Everything that we can do to reduce those upgrades, that's awesome. Great news.
There's also a smartphone that on the market now. It's called the Fairphone, which was just reviewed, and same thing. It's the whole premise is you can upgrade the screen and the memory and the battery and the processor, because there's basically 4 parts to a phone or a laptop, and making those parts very incredibly simple to replace and upgrade means you just upgrade each part as you need, and you stop falling victim to the whole marketing annual thing each year, and just upgrade as you need. And beautifully, you can repair the phone as you need.
Well, the right to repair is kind of a growing movement, but the also another thing is just quite pointedly, Apple needs to support older systems. They keep kind of end of lifing some hardware for lots of business reasons, but it's not good for the planet.
Okay, next up is CSQ sends in this one that Hyundai Motors to launch test bed for autonomous cars. Hyundai, the South Korean automaker tech giant, announced on Tuesday that it is creating the test bed that will be built at the Hyundai and Kia Technology Research Facility. And what else we got here? Some 60 companies launched the Autonomous Driving Industry Association. So they're all going to work together to make sure that the politicians fall in line. And what's the next one here? From Politico Europe, that Macron in France wants to impose tougher rules on the world's biggest tech companies, and he plans to use next year's European election to do it. But opponents are already massing against his most ambitious plan to change Europe's approach to internet liability. Okay, and then RCC sends in this one that Mark Cuban-backed company called Alethea AI is building a metaverse of NFT avatars. Just when we were getting our heads around non-fungible tokens, NFTs, that represent a unique digital asset, they're now gaining sentience and moving around the metaverse. So you're going to have metaverse characters that are NFTs. AI, metaverse NFTs. And
I don't see why that's two different things, because they're digital. I mean, that's what they are. They're digital representations, right? So, and that's what a metaverse is, right? So, oh, I guess it's because it's on a blockchain. Okay, I get it.
Nokia's bringing back a new version, a remodel of its classic handheld phone, the 6310. One of the best-selling smartphones of all time, really kicking off. It was one of the first phones with a screen.
The candy bar?
Indestructible.
The candy bar, yes. And now they've made a modern retake on it with a slightly bigger screen, very stylish. It looks like the phone I had living in Tokyo in the 90s. Looks pretty cool, though. And that takes...
It's under $40.
Yeah, super cheap. But that takes us to... I'm now just 16 hours behind on the tweets. And we will do our Saturday special deep dive to get all caught up on all the tweets. So do join us tomorrow at this time, and we will get through all the tweets so we can catch up on all the week's tweets. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks as always, Tyler.
Alrighty.